The internet admits what they still don't understand. Questions answered.
How can we lose so much hair every day and still have hair stay consistent length? Especially people who have long hair.
Alright, say you lose 100 hairs a day. That seems like a lot. However, most people have around 100,000 hairs on their scalp. That's only 0.1% of the total amount of hair you have, and those hairs start to grow back again pretty quickly. I just don't get how I get taller and more handsome every time my grandma sees me. Well, either because you're simply one hunky fella, or your gram is progressively shrinking and losing vision. I'm betting on the former being the case, though. How people get up in the morning feeling good and refreshed. I've woken up tired since before I can remember. I don't remember if they just mentally power through the tired, or if they feel something I don't or can't.
I will say if you get enough sleep, eat right, exercise, and stay hydrated, you can still feel energized all day despite how you feel when you wake up. I'm just not a morning person, and that's okay.
Why the frick does my brain only realize I'm wrong after I've already done it? This is me playing chess. The order of emails in a Gmail thread. The one you're looking for is always hidden somewhere in the middle. I really don't get how a needle in a record player bouncing back and forth can create such rich sound. And I'm going to confuse you even more. Look up CED video discs. They're basically records but are movies, and are still read by that same needle. I have a CED player. I have no idea how it works. It just does, and it's insane.
The YouTube algorithm.
Yep, you and me both, my dude. It eludes us all, viewers and creators alike. Still to this day, don't know why I'm getting Malcolm in the Middle clips suggested to me in 2026. Waking up early, like 4 a.m. to go to work. Whoever invented it is a butthole.
There's a kid in my high school that lives so far away he has to wake up at 3 frickin' a.m. to get to school on time. Like, what?
How some people seem to get through life without a job, with no responsibility, no money, and they're totally fine. Meanwhile, I'm busting my butt trying to make a living for myself and my family and struggling like hell. This right here, I've got a buddy exactly like this. He's super charismatic and just has connections that hook him up with all sorts of fun stuff. He actually wasn't that great of a friend because he'd always blow everyone off because something better came along. Why people, when you're driving, have the audacity to pull in front of you and then drive slow as F when there's literally no other cars around. Like, just wait for me to pass if you're going to go 5 to 10 miles per hour under the speed limit. Why the hiring process at most companies is so damn slow. Back in the 60s, you could walk into a business asking about a job on Friday and start work the following Monday. Now, despite having access to tons of information about a candidate on the internet, it takes 6 or more weeks in many cases.
My ex once interviewed for a job and thought she did terribly. She never heard back at all, so accepted something else that she'd interviewed for at the same time. They called her almost 2 months later to tell her that they'd accepted her and she had the job. Her response? No, I've got a job, and why would I even want to work for a place that treats future employees like that? They seemed generally confused that she wasn't waiting for them to call her.
This is totally due to me not looking it up, but I don't know how dry cleaning works.
It's understandable. It's a liquid like a solvent that's water-free.
Oh, I thought it was called dry cleaning because they dried it up afterwards. I thought it was called dry cleaning because they had a method of cleaning where the clothes don't get wet.
I honestly thought they blew air so hard in a tumbling device like washing machine that dirt and stains just got yeeted out. Bitcoins and NFTs.
Frick me, NFTs are stupid. What's an NFT? It stands for non-fungible token. Basically, it's a digital signature saying you own the original of a digital, quote, artwork. There can be unlimited copies, but you own the original. People say it's like owning the original of painting instead of a print, but it's not. It's more like making a whole bunch of prints and then destroying the original painting, and then saying that one of those prints is the original. It's the dumbest frickin' nonsense I've ever heard. Unless, of course, you believe in that conspiracy theory that all expensive art is just a massive money laundering scheme, in which case, NFTs make perfect sense. How electricity works. Amps, volts, and watts, etc. Ugh. Amps are how many electrons flow. Volts are the force with which the generator is pushing these electrons. Watts is the amount of energy carried every second. This, of course, depends on the amount of electrons, so the amps, and the force they're pushed, so the volts. Watt hours. If the watt is the speed of energy transfer, this is the distance. That's the total amount of energy you transfer, which means that if you have 200 watt-hours of energy available and something consumes 100 watts, you can only power it for 2 hours. If it consumes 50 watts, you can power it for 4 hours. Those people who do parkour on high buildings. One mistake and you're dead. Well, they get a buzz out of that feeling of risk, so they keep doing it to keep replicating that buzz. If it were safe, they wouldn't do it because there'd be no excitement. I think a better question is how they don't die more frequently. Honestly, I think they do get injured severely and killed regularly. Their friends just don't post those videos. Stocks, investments, inflations, interest rates and stuff, or anything to do with finance really, that stuff is so confusing to me. Why it's so damn hard to be happy 95% of the time when you have a stable job, good health, family, and everything. Like, I have all of the pieces, but something is constantly missing. Ugh. As a side note, I'm fine, it's just annoying. People who don't get nervous when public speaking. It's particularly weird for me because I'm a nervous wreck right up until I actually start presenting. I once did a summer internship thing where we all had to present our stuff at the very end, and I had people years later telling me how impressed they were by my confidence. Little do they know that I was strategizing ways of removing myself from the entire situation. Maybe if I just go to the bathroom and they skip me, then forget to come back to me at the end. Or I could pretend to have lost my voice. How about those sudden flashes of motivation you get at midnight? I've read that it's due to there being no pressure or thoughts of what could go wrong. This is due to the fact that the motivation is typically for things that would be in the future or carry over into the future, and there's no reason to start or finish the things being thought of at that moment. My intentions when doing things. It seems that I can attribute everything I do to manipulation and attention-seeking, and that's kind of unsettling. Take the introspection one step further. Attention-seeking and manipulation are both ways of having one's needs met. Try and figure out what need it is that you're striving for. Most people want the same basic things: essential love and safety. Most people who employ these tactics have an external locus of identity, meaning their sense of self-worth is more informed by the reflection of worth from others rather than from their own understanding of their value. Attention-seeking is very broad, but most often when I see that term used, I see a person who's trying to ensure they're recognized as a person of worth, that the people around you care about you and will show up when you need them to. Manipulation is often due to a lack of trust in others meeting one's needs without coercion. Maybe because those needs aren't appropriate or not perceived to be, or the skills to ask or encourage others are underdeveloped. Maybe you have people in your life who aren't interested in meeting your needs when they're expressed in appropriate ways. Everything we do is meant to meet some need. Often trivial, but sometimes foundational. Try and understand what need or value could be prompting your actions. It can be very helpful in finding better ways to meet them and to understand yourself. Assess if the people in your life would be willing and capable of meeting your needs appropriately. A therapist can be a huge help for both of these. And remind yourself that you're a human, you have needs and have found effective ways of meeting them, ways that likely have been ingrained since you were a kid. Once you better understand those needs, you can start finding better ways to meet them. Most importantly, be compassionate with yourself as you explore this. You're a human and doing the best you can to survive and be whole. Good luck. I'm glad that someone can finally have the introspection to identify that everything they do is motivated by a need for attention, to be honest. Being a guy who does a fair bit of performing arts stuff in his spare time, you meet a lot of wonderful people who have that same characteristic, but are painfully unaware of it, and it's not really a thing one can bring up easily to them. Oh well, comes with the trade. Bitcoin mining? Solving algorithms? What? Who? Why? Imagine if keeping your car idling 24/7 produced solved Sudokus you could trade for smack. My friends, I've paraphrased this from something I read years ago, and the original source is apparently a tweet. Generating endless random numbers, combining them with the result of an arbitrary mathematical operation with a small amount of data from a previous block in the chain, and ignoring all results other than the one that matches a very specific, very difficult, but entirely arbitrary rule. All of this work to make it impractical, the same way that cracking passwords is, for any one person to commit fraud on the network even without a central authority, because the cost is prohibitively high. Okay, people are writing into me quite mad because I haven't explained where this creates value, so here we go. From me having not made it clear, I'm talking about blockchain, not cryptocurrencies. It doesn't. We assigned it value, and most of it is likely just the buy-in cost. We're talking your hardware, ongoing energy costs, the constant increases in difficulty for mining, and the people who already have too much money on their hands treating it as a speculative investment. There's also the whole topic of it being fairly anonymous and used to buy and sell substances. There's absolutely no intrinsic value in cryptocurrencies. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Space. It makes my brain hurt trying to figure out things like stars and black holes. The size and distances with space are just so hard to fathom. The time it takes to get anywhere is depressing. The sizes and distances of it all are absolutely mind-boggling. It's so massive and far that it has to be measured in the amount of distance that light can travel in a year. And light travels 186,000 miles per second. I feel so insignificant just thinking about it. But it can also be kind of comforting in a way, because that means all of my problems are also insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Why do people who seem miserable as parents decide to have more kids? I'd like to direct this question towards the parents I currently nanny for. The father clearly doesn't like his kids and has said before he never even wanted kids, yet they have three. 3 children that are quite honestly some of the worst behaved kids I've ever worked with, and I've been working with kids in and out of a school setting going on 15 years now. Why didn't you stop after the first one? It's the puppy principle. They want something to love, something that loves them, but once the potty training and the cast and the medical stuff comes up, it's all just an in-the-moment decision. That no concept of an absolute position in space exists. Chemistry. I only passed because my professor curved every F to a C. The stock market. Anyone want to explain it like I'm 5? Alright, I'll try. You have a nice little company. You decide, hey, I'm going to let anyone buy a little piece of my business. It'll raise a bunch of money for my company, and in exchange, the buyers will own a little piece of it. You sell these little pieces of your company, or shares of it, to lots of your neighbors and friends who buy these little pieces. Since they've bought these shares in your company, they can also get little bonuses, like if you make profits, you share them out with these shareholders. They can also vote on stuff that might affect the company. When you think about it, once you sell a lot of these shares, then these people sort of own the company. It's just that you run it, and you'd better run it well, otherwise they might vote someone else in and put them in charge. Your company is a cool little tech company. Other people think, hey, this might take off. I want a share of that. So these other people start buying these shares off of your neighbors and friends, offering them more money, because they think these shares of your company will be worth more in the future. It's far easier to do this on some sort of market rather than buying from your neighbors and friends directly. There's a market for these shares and shares of other companies. It's called the stock market. People buy and sell shares of companies on that market, depending on what's happening in the world. So, like, if a pandemic hits, they think, oh hey, loads of people will be staying at home, so they'll probably be watching a whole ton of Netflix. I bet Netflix will get loads of subscribers, so I'm going to buy Netflix shares because I think that's going to go up. So that's what they do. My general understanding of it is it works because everyone says it does, which I guess is true of money in general. How light is both a particle and a wave? People who train everyone around them terribly and then complain that nobody likes them. See also people that proudly say, yeah, I'm a jerk. I had an acquaintance that proudly and giddily said, I'm toxic. I left that guy pretty fast. How these dogs that have these dense bangs hanging over their eyes can see a single gosh darn thing. Well, they can't see much with them, but dogs rely much more on hearing and smell, so it shouldn't be a huge deal to them. But I'd bet they'd prefer being able to see. Although I think a lot of grooming styles where the eyes are covered are mostly for show dogs, and when they're not being shown, they have a little top knot. The existence of everything. Why do I trust myself to fail so much and like myself so little? Why do I hate positive attitude advice from other people? Because you're aware of all your flaws while being aware of only a fraction of other people's. So by comparison, you think you're worse. You're not worse, it's just that you can't hide your own flaws from yourself as well as other people can hide theirs from you. Existence and self-awareness. The more you think, the more the concept of I is creepy. It amazes me how much I can get lost in my own mind just thinking about how I'm thinking is possible. My conscience was ripped from the void and shoved into this body. Does it go back when I die? Is it nothingness or something more? Why I continue to procrastinate and self-sabotage. Just wanted to say a few things to help the people who asked. First, this wasn't supposed to be a cry for help. I'm fine. I was just in a bad mood yesterday when I wrote that. 2. Yes, I have ADD, depression, and anxiety. Anyone who suggested that may be the cause is correct. 3. I'm on meds and they help a ton. 4. If this comment rang true to anyone, I'd definitely recommend seeing a mental health professional. It can make a world of difference. And 5. Anyone who suggested it's because I'm lazy and not disciplined or any other thanks I'm cured type nonsense, you can go F yourself. Cryptocurrency. I've had it explained to me numerous times, but it still goes right over my head. We use money as a medium of exchange because it's hard to forge, meaning that you can't create an arbitrary amount of it because it's produced by governments, protected by governments, and is full of security features aimed at preventing forgery. Cryptocurrency is a way of producing something similarly hard to forge, but without requiring a government to regulate supply. It's just money, but stateless. Thank you. This is our second or third inclusion of this topic in the video because, to be honest, even with the prior explanations, I wasn't really getting it. And I'm still not sure I understand the algorithm part of it at all, but this at least breaks down why we've placed some value in this one thing. What was there before the Big Bang?
I think it was Scrubs, or How I Met Your Mother. Scrubs was funnier in my opinion though. But to give a serious answer, my money's on previous universes that collapsed in on themselves and then exploded out into ours ad infinitum. Unfortunately, we humans have developed the ability to ask questions outside of our universe that, by definition, can never be solved within it. Questions like, what is outside our universe? Or, what is there before? Was there before? Note that by universe, I mean everything in our reality that we can know. So if the multiverse theorem or many worlds are true, those extra spaces of information are included in what I'm calling universe. How to socialize? Like, what the frick? For me, it's all acting. Like, people who see me in crowds, at mixers, or networking or whatever would say I'm a natural, but really, it's a lot more like playing a character who's comfortable doing those things. As soon as I walk out of the room, my happy face just falls off and I'm exhausted. In real life, I have severe social anxiety. Diagnosed. Unlike 2 real close friends. If someone tries to strike up a conversation when I'm not expecting it, I'm probably a lot more rude than I mean to be. I really have to amp myself up playing that social character. Cruelty towards pets. Even just cruelty in itself is hard to understand, but like defenseless creatures, it makes me despair of humans. Littering. Frickin' trash behavior. Honestly, I can't grasp this concept of throwing crap out of the window of a car. Wherever you're going, there'll be a trash can. It can wait. I'm looking at you, smokers. People who idolize politicians, like, Jesus frickin' Christ, why?
If you want an actual answer, it's the same mechanics of why people idolize religious figures, YouTube stars, or everything they know but can't actually touch. Parasocial relationships. They feel like they're their best friends because the politicians say they care so much about them, when really it's a persuasion tactic for their ideology. Those realistic testes that some truck drivers have. It's so unnecessary that I don't know why anyone would put that on their vehicle.
I listened to a podcast about them once who interviewed the people that have them, the creators and stuff, and they more or less concluded that they are usually a gag gift, prank, or they're being used ironically.
Maths, as in all of it. It makes me super anxious and then I get upset and give up. I'm 40 this year and I can still be stressed out by someone mentioning maths.
I've played music for 20 plus years and music theory just goes over my head. I know my major and minor scales, I know my chord structures, but putting it all together escapes me. I have people tell me my songs are cool or that they love how the chord pattern works backwards to the root, and I'm just like, I don't know, I just wrote it.
How people can be so hateful and for no reason. Like, I'm literally studying psychology, and it's at the point where I genuinely can't explain why some people are just nicer and more understanding of others. Everything I've learned has only made the answer harder, more complex, and ironically enough, more vague. If you told me, breaking news, humanity is really split into 2 species and the deciding genetic factor is the ability to show empathy for people who aren't like you, I'd believe it in a heartbeat. Fighting is fundamentally stupid, intraspecies competition is universally harmful for every member of that species in the long run when resources aren't scarce, yet our species loves to create its own problems. Ridiculous. I don't understand why adoption is so costly. If a child needs a home and someone is fit to raise them, why the added financial burden? Private and international adoption can be costly, but we adopted our kids through an adoption agency that worked with our local county and was funded by the county. We ended up getting a foster kid who was in the final stages of being cleared for adoption. We had to pay maybe $150 in total. I don't even remember what those fees were for. The background check maybe? We had to make our house child-friendly and take something like 20 hours of classes and take another 8 or so of filling out a lot of paperwork. We had the ability to select all kinds of criteria for what kind of child we wanted, but we said that we'd take pretty much any kid who wasn't severely disabled, since we wouldn't be able to handle that. We got a 1-year-old child, but I found out later that teenagers are the hardest to get adopted and end up aging out of the foster care system before they can be matched with a family. It was worth it in the end, and the county ended up contacting us later, offering us the chance to adopt a biological sibling. We said yes. It's been 10 years now, and we've got a couple of great kids. Our process cost a lot of time, but little money. When did you realize you were being catfished? My ex-girlfriend tried catfishing me to test me. It took me about 30 seconds of looking through the profile before I realized that the name was her name backwards. The craziest thing is that she really thought it would work. That girl was bonkers. About 6 years ago, I found out my brother was a catfish. He had been catfishing this young man in the UK whilst being in America. He had fake pictures, a fake name, but his real phone number. The guy being catfished, we'll call him Lenny, would repeatedly call my brother and leave messages on our house phone. My brother and Lenny often sent each other packages of sweets. Lenny made the decision to come to America to visit since he's never been, and my brother agreed. On the day Lenny arrived in Texas, my brother told him the truth but never actually met up with Lenny. Lenny tried all week trying to convince my brother to meet him, telling him that he just wanted to know who he really was. My brother never showed up. Lenny called religiously every day for about a month, trying to get my brother back. I think he really loved him. After that, I never heard from him again. In my sophomore year of college, my friend Kerry, a 19-year-old guy, met a girl named Kelly in a chat room. They talked a lot and got close. One day, Kelly revealed that her boyfriend broke her jaw. Kerry drove to a city a few hours away to rescue her and learned that Kelly was really Kenny. Kenny beat Kerry into giving up all of his passwords, then unalived him and left his body in a field. Then Kenny impersonated Kerry online for several days in an attempt to cover his tracks. He did a bad job and got caught and deleted himself in jail before trial. I realize how this all sounds with all the names beginning with K and ending with a Y, but it's a true story. You can Google it. It really messed me up for a while. So, when I was a freshman in high school, I was big into Neopets and had a clique I ran on the boards, and we chatted off-site as well. 2 of these people were Shelby and Adam, same age as myself, more or less, and dating. Adam had a sister, Kelsey I think, who was also in the clique. Well, it came to pass, as internet relationships do, that Shelby and Adam broke up, and Adam and I started talking/dating. Shelby gave us her blessing. We shared pics. He was a typical emo-looking kid, which 14-year-old me loved. We talked on the phone, only once or twice. I was very shy about it, so I didn't mind the lack of voice communication. At one point, he sent me a YouTube video of him and his friends. There wasn't much talking and it was all pretty muffled, and it sounded like they were speaking German. Later, Adam and I broke up, and it was after that the big reveal came. There was no Adam. Kelsey had made him up and been posing as him all along. I asked Shelby about it, and apparently she had found out when they'd broken up too, but Kelsey had made her promise not to tell. Gee, thanks. In short, Neopets is good for clean fun, but not dating. Yep, being on the internet pretty much my entire life has taught me that if your online activity has a social function of any sort and gets to a certain size, people will use it to date. In many cases, more successfully than this, I might add. I have to say, I don't understand what the catfishers get out of any of this, but evidently it's something because so many people do it and keep doing it. I was talking to a girl I met on Tinder, and while I have on my profile that I'm not interested in being anyone's third, she kept talking about the guy she was currently seeing and how hot he was, and didn't I want to F him with her? I eventually found her Facebook and his was a real Facebook while hers consisted of 2 really fake-looking photos and no actual information. So it became apparent at that point it was the guy just trying to get bi girls to do stuff with him. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun story. I used to be on Omegle, a chat site, a few times when I was 17 or so. Everyone asked ASL, which means age, male or female, and location, and most of them would disconnect when you said you were male. So at one point, I told people I was female just to be able to talk to people. Anyway, I connected to a girl and we had a great time together. We chatted for 2 hours or so because I believe we gave each other our Skype addresses. I had to create mine in a quick hurry because I didn't have a fake girly Skype address that matched my fake name. We went on to chat almost every day just for fun, and even though I knew I was lying to her by being a girl, I still had some fun, but I felt really guilty for lying to her and I knew we couldn't meet in real life, even though we lived close to each other. One day she confessed that she was lying to me about something. That thing turned out to be that she was a guy as well. We kept contact and we had a great time together still, and we actually met each other once. He died 2 years later though, but still, good times. Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and nobody to talk to. He tried online dating, but went to a free site and got hooked. A lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly enough. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we didn't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was on a holiday, Thanksgiving week. We all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. He came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, I forget where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone and no credit cards, no ID or no tickets. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she had never visited. If we hadn't been there, and he'd told me some of the details, which of course set off my bullcrap alarms, he would have sent her a couple of grand to get back. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first. I had to ask him for some more details. How's she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using the dating site to chat. What's the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses, but stopped responding to any attempts to get actual proof from her. We stopped responding a day or two later after she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount this time, to pay some sort of fine or she'd be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't for certain that she wasn't real, despite the whole family telling him it was definitely a scam. I even kind of think he sent her money in the first part of the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he, using stolen pics online. I did do an image search on one of the photos, but nothing came up. The moral of the story? If you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, and stuff like that. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I knew a few elderly people that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. About 10 years ago, I started chatting with a guy in one of the Yoohoo chat rooms. We'd only been chatting for a few weeks when he suddenly disappeared offline for about 2 weeks. I was so worried, but then his, quote, sister contacted me and told me he'd been in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was in the ICU, but she kept in touch with me to let me know how he was. After about a month, he got back online and we talked every day. We traded pics and eventually I got on webcam to say hi. He couldn't do the same because of some issues with his computer. We talked like this for nearly 3 years. It was around this time I realized that his sister was actually him. It didn't matter though, I was besotted with him, and I mean totally head over heels. Then one day, he just disappeared. His profile was deleted, all his accounts were gone, and I haven't heard a single word from him since. I still have absolutely no idea who he or she really was, and it messed me up for a long time. I still think about it at times. I'd do anything to know the truth. I don't know, maybe his real-life partner found out or something. So I have to level with you viewers. I really don't understand these people or their victims. Like, I don't think I have the capacity to fall completely for someone who I've only talked to via a text medium online. Maybe I'm just an unromantic, more extroverted sort, which would be a surprise to me. It's fascinating to learn that this is such a big ongoing thing, though. On to the next one. It was when I was a teenager, not too long after the birth of ICQ. I'd met this one person in a chat room, and things started to get more and more personal. Not too long later, they eventually broke down and admitted that they'd been lying, and that they weren't a young hot girl, but instead a man. The guy seemed really remorseful, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I wasn't a young hot lesbian either. This might be a little late, but I actually unintentionally catfished someone. I was playing League of Legends, and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely, he kept referring to me as she. Again, I didn't think twice about it, and I just kept playing with him, but eventually he started to get real creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he'd log on at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with me, and started to become a white knight. Whenever anyone would trash talk me, which is pretty normal for League of Legends, he'd vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players, and whoever else. Shortly after that, he'd start saying "Good night, BB," which I thought was bye-bye, so I'd say "Haha, good night, BB," back to him. Then he'd start sending me hearts, like the triangular bracket number 3, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I'd jokingly message that heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full-on thought I was a woman the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, "Dude, I'm a guy." And he went on a rampage. He started cussing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was female was because of my username, and because I used proper grammar and spelling. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. He claimed to be a US Marine, yet had an extravagant amount of free time to play Mamorpagas. Someone here on Reddit offered to run his name through the USMC database. Well, someone by his name did, but they'd been discharged in 1958 or something, whereas this guy claimed to be 21. Good old stolen valor. Similar thing happened to a guild I was in. The leader was supposedly a Canadian soldier with UN forces fighting warlords in Africa. It went so far that he got chemical burns in his lungs and sounded like heck on voice chat. Turns out it was all bullcrap. He'd used a voice changer to sound raspy. It was so weird, and the guild disbanded over it. I was probably 19, very bad with women, and very into role-playing on things called MUXs or MUXs. I think it was a very roleplay-centric all-text MMO. I met a girl on one of these MUXs. She was a senior in high school. I'd just graduated, and we started hanging out online, which went to "let's call and talk about the plots we're running in," which became "I love you" a couple of weeks later. There was a lot of fun. I scanned my junk, she scanned hers, we sent it to each other. We'd sit on the phone and laugh about stuff until like 3 a.m. or whenever her dad would come in and tell her to hang up. She was the first girl I ever did the deed with on the phone. I still get a weird tingle when I see girls in videos using the bathtub to have fun. This was all before camera phones, so all I had to go on was my imagination. Well, calls started slowing down. Then the letters stopped getting responded to. Eventually, she just stopped talking to me altogether. About then, I started putting the pieces together, how her pictures were always like some girl in a crowd or some schoolgirl's photos, and how all my mail came back returned to sender until she gave me a new, completely different address. The signs were all there, I was just willfully ignoring them. I think there was probably some feelings on her end. My theory is that she was a lot younger than she was claiming, and I was talking a lot of nonsense about her moving to my state so we could be together. I think she got scared, or her parents found out she was talking to an older guy and she cut contact. The romance seemed two-directional. I liked making her laugh and making silly plans with her. She genuinely seemed to enjoy my humor and company. But then again, she was telling me she was 17, and how hard is it not to laugh at 17 sometimes? So, if your name is Rashni, or if you pretended to be a girl named Rashni in like 2000s, no hard feelings. Thanks for laying the groundwork and making my current relationship, which has a temporary long-distance aspect, a lot easier. And whenever I think about our imaginary son, Spaghetti Bucket, I smile and I wish you well. I had a friend back in high school who was catfished. Told us this story a week after it happened at a graduation party. He had been chatting with this girl from Florida for 3 years. Decided to finally go and visit her for a week after our high school graduation. So he took a plane down and she was going to pick him up at the airport. He arrives and instead is greeted by her mother, who says her daughter is waiting for him back at the house. So he gets his bags and heads for the car with her. He notices this guy sitting in the back seat around his age. Funny that he didn't remember anything about her having a brother. He starts getting a little weirded out at this point. They finally arrive at the house. No girl in sight. He gets angry and has the mother spill the beans. Turns out this lady was using her niece's pictures to talk with him. How he didn't realize sooner, I don't know. Maybe they never talked on the phone, or maybe her voice sounded young. Anyways, he immediately left this lady and her son and spent the night at a hotel and had his parents pay for a plane ticket back home the next day. Okay, so for a moment I thought it was going to be the son in the back seat who was the catfish, and was wondering if he'd somehow got his mum in on the fishing, or if he'd hired someone to play his parent until they were back home. My god, story 3 in our video has me just thinking about how dangerous these situations can be, so in a way I was kind of relieved it was just a love-starved older gal. I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter, who was easily a 9 out of 10, one of the hottest girls I've ever seen. That was my first clue, because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like myself, who she'd never met, were very slim, especially as she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone who I'd never met. I just put that down to me being different, like not reciprocating any feelings or never telling her how hot she was and stuff like that. She wanted to meet me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend, despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her. I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or decoy. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with her. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I just cut off all contact. Funnily enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years. She had been leading guys on and went really far with her charade up to the point where she seemed mentally unstable. So bullet dodged, I guess. What I should clarify is that this girl was not just using someone else's pictures, she was using the girl's life. She'd pretended to be the exact same girl in the picture and used her first name, her friends' names, her life story, everything. So in essence, anyone would think they were talking to the real girl and could tell the real girl everything about her, even though they didn't actually know her. She made fake Facebooks of loads of her friends and used to post pictures, taking them off the real girl's Facebook, and tag the fake profiles of these friends in, leaving comments. Arguably, this was true identity fraud more than catfishing, but the blog post stated that the catfish apologized and acknowledged she was crazy. She just didn't know how to stop and only did it because she enjoyed the fake life more than her own. And she never did stop until that blog post came out. I met someone on OkCupid. He was moving from New York City to my city and said he was a surgeon. That was my first red flag. I wondered why a successful surgeon was on a free dating site. We chatted for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to talk on the phone. Red flag number 2. At this point, I assumed he was fake. He deleted his profile, saying he couldn't wait to meet me in 3 weeks when he was scheduled to fly in for a weekend to find a condo. I reverse searched his picture and found another profile, same story, but it said he was moving to Phoenix. Red flag number 3. At this point, I know he's fake, but now I'm having fun making him think I'm totally hooked. He gave me bad med advice when I sprained my ankle, then told me he had a thing for feet, and he'd be making sure I'd get daily pedicures when I quit my job and moved in with him. The weekend he was supposed to fly in, his current almost former boss, quote, died, and he couldn't make it. I sent him screenshots of his other profile and told him I knew all along and I'd just been messing with him. Good times. I talked to this guy, Sean, for months, probably close to a year. Then, poof, gone. It sucked, but oh well. 6 months later, started talking to another guy with the same unusual middle name. He turned out to be Sean's ex-boyfriend, and about 80% of the stuff I knew about Sean was actually about him. He broke up with Sean 6 months before and took his phone back, and that's why he disappeared. In short, I met the real-life inspiration for the persona I was catfished with. Catfish here. I really like turkey liver, and the next thing I know, someone's yanking me out of the water and frying me with some okra and hush puppies. Okay, so I actually had this happen to me recently. I was using a dating app and started talking to this girl. She had 5 photos on there, 2 of her and 3 group photos. Nothing surprising for a girl on a dating site. We agreed to grab coffee, and I arrived early and sat outside, and this girl walks up to me and says hello. She introduced herself as the girl I was meeting, but didn't look anything like her. Something was familiar about her, but I couldn't go and take out my phone to check, so I went ahead with the date. We ordered coffee and I thought about making a break for it right there when she went and put sugar in it, but decided to stay. Start talking and we pick up the conversation we were having online, but after about half a cup, I'd had enough, and it wasn't going anywhere, so I made up some BS excuse and I left. Back in the car, I opened up my phone to look at her profile again and figured out why she looked familiar. She was in the photos. She was one of the girls in the group, but she was using her friend as the main photo. Very weird. The sad part was that she wasn't terrible looking, just kind of boring, and she wasn't as good looking as her friend. I can't fathom the very sad lack of self-confidence of what was going on there. Well, most of these stories have been confusing to me, some have been outright infuriating, but this one is just sad. Here's hoping she found whatever community or activity would help her break out of her shell. When she showed up and had a male organ. 8 out of 10 would try again. My best friend's father found out when my friend told him. He was in love, but her photos were too perfect, so my friend got some proof together and broke the news to him. He took it well. I was catfished on a dating site. She was way too hot to be talking to me, and sure enough, she was a model in a relationship. Bummer. A few years back, it wasn't anything serious, just this girl sending me pictures when I was 12 or 13, and I sent some back. I logged into my old email when I was around 16, and I looked up the email she had used and found out it was this older man who posted up his email asking for girls. He sent me another girl's pictures. Piece of crap. I dated this woman for a few months who claimed she was a doctor. I thought, cool, and just went with it. I caught on by her continually talking about how she was going to buy a car. She'd claimed she'd sold her car before moving. She also claimed she was going to buy me random things, claimed she was going to take me to Vegas, went on and on like this and never delivered on anything. I had suspicions for a while, but what finally provided evidence was looking her up in medical registries. She wasn't listed anywhere. I confronted her and she kept trying to make lame excuses for anything I asked about. Haven't talked to her since. When did a colossal idiot completely implode in court? I was on a jury where the defendant showed up in court day one wearing the exact same outfit as the unknown suspect in the video of the crime. It took only a few seconds before the judge immediately called a stoppage. All the lawyers went into the back with the judge and they came out like 7 minutes later and announced that the defendant had taken the plea deal. Wild. The client was being sued and he didn't like the opposing counsel or the judges, so he left the court a bunch of voicemails so profane that he was subject to a criminal contempt of court hearing. I will never understand these people. I've been before a magistrate twice in my life and you'd better believe I was as polite could be. What sort of damn fool looks at the person who can destroy their life with the bang of a gavel and thinks, I'm gonna give this guy a piece of my mind? With the utmost certainty in his voice, he yelled at the arresting officer, "It's not domestic violence, I'm on public property." You could tell from his face that he really thought he had the cop over a barrel with that one. But let's just say reality stepped in pretty quick there. The petitioner attorney's client. The man claimed workers' compensation and threw the kitchen sink at us, meaning he basically listed just over half of his body parts on the claim petition, stating that he had injured each one. He was full of crap and my firm knew it. Anyways, we were going to trial and the day before we ran one more social media search. This absolute frickin' moron posted a video of him winning a breakdance competition that was only a few months after the alleged work incident. Never saw a quicker dismissal in my life. One client of ours baffles me to this day. He had multiple cases, including aggravated battery and substance possession. At the insistence of the dude's family, we moved heaven and earth, getting him bond, so that he could get out of jail and live with said family until the case was over. The whole process took weeks. Less than a day after getting out, he was caught stealing $16 worth of batteries from Target. Bond revoked. To be fair, the line between stupidity and compulsion is blurred with this one. For anyone who's curious, we immediately ordered a psych evaluation for him. He was found competent, but it was also confirmed that he had mental health issues. The aggravated battery charge ended up being dropped and he took a plea for time served. My wife's lawyer bans all clients from using social media after he lost a big case. A wrongful death lawsuit where a man's wife was killed. Easy money, right? They were about to settle until the other side found his pictures online from a club a week after his wife died, with him underneath an exotic dancer whilst wearing a shirt that said, "I love MILFs." Apparently, they could prove that he didn't have that much pain and suffering anymore. Well, people deal with grief in very unusual ways, and it's honestly not impossible that this guy was in fact in a great deal of pain over the loss, but nonetheless, it is not a good look. Not in the US, but the judge asked if the defendant was remorseful. If you show regrets, you can have some leniency. No. The guy didn't understand the question, and when he doesn't, he just usually says no. Client added 9 years to his short sentence. He'd got like a year or two from being involved in a drag race where the other guy crashed and severely injured someone else. Then, towards the end of his short prison term, he tried to escape and got 9 more years for prison escape. He became friends with John Lennon's killer in the New York prison, which was interesting. A guy I used to work with's brother-in-law got injured at work and was suing for a hefty sum. The case was pretty much open and close. All the evidence was in the brother-in-law's favor. Until he started talking. They asked him to tell them about the day of the accident. The brother-in-law started out fine until he got to the point where he approached the piece of equipment that injured him. He tells everyone that there was a note on it stating that it was out of order. The brother-in-law then says that he discarded the note and started up the piece of malfunctioning equipment as he had a job to do. That easy win was discarded faster than that out-of-order sign. The worst clients to defend are the ones that think they're smarter than they are. When it comes time for depositions, broad, sweeping statements of how I would never allow discrimination in my office and how I'm 100% sure I never said that are a great way to destroy your own credibility, set yourself up to get eviscerated by opposing counsel, and ultimately turn a nuisance value bullcrap case into something worth 6 figures. The moral of the story? If you're going to ignore the entire day of deposition prep I did with you, just so you can protect your own fragile ego on the record, at least do me the courtesy of telling me to F off ahead of time. I had an instructor who was a prosecutor. He called a witness who had seen the whole thing and had an interest in seeing the defendant punished. Slam dunk case, right? She thought she was on TV. She overreacted every word, completely embellished the retelling of events, didn't lie, but she was the center of her version of events. He said you could see the faces of the jury members sour minute by minute. He lost the case. I was defending a client who was accused of trademark infringement. He thought he knew better than the IP attorney assigned to the case, me, and so he went on his company's website to defend himself by basically confessing to what he did and claiming it wasn't against the law and that the trademark owner was a, quote, woke baby who needed to either, quote, learn the law or get back in the kitchen and make her husband a sandwich. I really wish I could say I was joking. I was one email away from negotiating a settlement that would have allowed the continued use of the complainant's mark with limited restrictions and a very nominal fee. Little to say, she saw his website, told us to go F ourselves and dragged it before a judge. My client lost huge. His lack of self-control cost him thousands of dollars. I worked in a firm. Workers' compensation claim, a guy falls down at work and claims he injured many different parts of his body, shoulders, knees, and back. We told him to stay off social media. No problem, he doesn't use social media. At the trial, he tells the judge he used to be a spin class instructor, but since the accident, he can't teach classes anymore. Well, turns out he continued to teach these classes after his injury. This was proved by hours of surveillance the insurance company did, showing him teaching and vigorously riding in spin class. How did the insurance company know he was still an active instructor? The guy posted his full teaching schedule on his Facebook page. His potentially very lucrative claim was quickly changed to a fraud claim against him. Not me, but a colleague. A wealthy client's son got picked up for substance dealing at a local music festival. The client bailed him out and then had his whole fancy law firm defend his son. The son then shambled into the courtroom, clearly on something, and loudly attempted to buy substances off the bailiff. There wasn't a lot the lawyers could do after that. The client was part of a group of people who were involved in the worst sorts of crime, notably particularly horrific forms of the unspeakable act. During their crime spree, one of their victims sadly lost their life. Our guy's defense was that he was just a voyeur. So although he was there, he wasn't involved in the actual murder. He was on bail the whole time, including the trial, up to when he decided to change his story and say instead that he hadn't been there. His sister gave evidence that he'd come home that night covered in blood. He got a long, long time. Paralegal once had a convicted criminal explain to me how their murder charge should be overturned because the victim didn't die at the scene of the crime. The victim died at the hospital, therefore the defendant couldn't be charged with anything more than attempted murder. Did anyone see the video of the guy doing an online court hearing for driving without a license? He answers the call while he's driving, without a license. Recently, he was in court, and apparently part of the requirements of this guy was that he not talk to his family. He called his mother on Mother's Day. The judge said, "Your mother seems to care about your freedom as little as you do. Put the cuffs on him." I don't know the perimeters of this case, I was just a bystander in court. The lawyer, in sweats mind you, said, "Judge, I told her, you can't fix stupid." It was wild to watch. I used to review disability claims, so I often worked with clients who had lawyers. A man whose attorney had instructed him not to speak with us directly, which is a very smart, very basic recommendation, called me up to rant angrily that his lawyer was wrong. He could shop for groceries and mow the lawn and do all sorts of housework just fine, thank you. Now, I'd seen this man's medical records. There was no way he was doing all of that without difficulty, so I probed a little further. He could shop for groceries as long as he used a mobility scooter and had his wife carry things in the house. He could mow the lawn if he used a riding mower and took a lengthy break every 10 minutes or so. He could do housework, which was limited to wiping down counters and folding but not carrying laundry. I called his attorney and gave them a quick update as soon as he and I hung up. I approved his claim, but that man is so damn lucky he got someone who was willing to take an extra 15 minutes with him. Did the guy just not want to get his claim approved? What was happening here? Bizarre. Maybe it was some form of not wanting to admit to himself that his condition had got to that point? Who knows? I was in courtroom watching injunctions and restraining orders play out. One case, this woman was there, but the man was in prison, so he was calling in. After deciding on an agreement, the guy asked if he could make a statement. At the end of his statement, he asked, "And tell the woman to go F herself." He got an additional 6 months in prison. The guy asked to make another statement after getting a tongue lashing from the judge, and he did it again, telling her to go F herself, and got another 6 months. Imagine losing a year of your life because you couldn't shut up for 5 minutes. Around 1990, there was a guy on trial for armed robbery. He pled not guilty. A witness on stand identified the defendant. The defendant jumped to his feet and roared, "I should have blown your head off when I had the chance." He paused, thinks, and added, "If I had been the one who robbed you." A friend of mine used to be a latent print analyst, going to get prints off a suspected arrest for breaking into a home to rob it. While she's getting the ink and paper set up, the suspect shouts, "What do you need the prints for? She looked right at me when I kicked in the door." I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Client was arrested on a DUI. Client lived in a small town. He and his wife would drive to the one bar in town, drink, then walk to their houseboat after a night at the bar. It was a quarter mile away. He and the wife know everyone in the bar. Another patron that they know gets blasted. The bar owner says she can't stay. The client and wife walk her to his car to stay there until the ride comes. The client gets in the back seat of the SUV. The client is drunk, drops keys on the way to the front seat, opens the now unlocked front door, turns on the car lights to see. He walked around the front from the rear passenger seat. The cops are waiting to see if people leave the bar drunk, see the lights, so of course suspect driving, and immediately roll up and arrest the client. This client has a prior DUI from about 12 years before. The judge agreed that it wouldn't come in. The jury wouldn't hear it unless he, quote, opened the door. He can't win the case unless the guy testifies. I prep him, continue to prep him, keep prepping him, but keep telling him under no circumstances can he say that he would never drive drunk. Never make broad statements like that. Basically, nothing about the past. No. Direct questioning is going well. I gave him a beautiful, easy last question where he could explain the night and explain why he was upset he got arrested, because he wasn't driving and was doing everything right. He then says, "I would never do something like that." The door is open, the judge lets in the rebuttal, brings up the old DUI, and the jury takes about 25 minutes to convict. And that's one of about 100 stories. Life is never dull in the criminal defense world. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was a legal clerk for a couple of years in college. Still baffles me how this one made it all the way to the trial. A lady slipped and fell at a chain restaurant and hurt her back irreparably. Wanted a huge payout. She said she slipped on butter that was on the floor. On cross-exam, she was asked what kind of butter, and she answers, "The little pats of butter they put out in the buffet." The defense immediately recalled the store manager. The store had never used that type of butter. The case ended pretty quickly. My dad's psychotic ex-girlfriend was trying to press bogus charges against him, trying to ruin his life and career. And his family. She attempted to make up some things about me too. I had to go through interviews, detectives' office talks, AP's visits. My dad and I filed protective orders. Her response to the protective orders, and I was afraid it would happen, was to vandalize a part of his property in a very gross and obscene way. She also went back to the detective to make up another claim on me, saying I stole her non-prescribed substances, so basically admitting she had illegal substances. So she got a bit more than just a protective order against her. She had jail time now too. Good riddance. I'm not a lawyer, and this isn't my story. But the lawyer who handled my business stuff and had a legal dispute is a federal judge. Before he became a judge, he was a lawyer for divorces and civil stuff. A wealthy male client filed for divorce. There's a prenup. It's pretty ironclad. It discusses the distribution of wealth. The alimony, if any, is laid out at X amount, increasing yearly based on inflation. There is one major exception, and that is if you're caught cheating, you automatically get the worst terms of the prenup. There were also criteria laid out for what constituted cheating. In the woman's case, if she cheats, she gets zero alimony and gets a one-time payment of $100,000. In the man's case, if he cheats, he loses the main family home, all cars that aren't his daily driver, and 1/4 of his business. A buyout option is available but doesn't matter in this story. The lawyer gets to court and meets with his client in a conference room, and the client is beaming. He shakes the lawyer's hand and says, "Hey Mike, I want you to meet Jasmine. I met her 2 months ago. She's amazing. We got engaged over the weekend in France." And Mike shook her hand and slumped in his chair and said, "So, we've got a major problem. You're cheating on your wife with her, and legally this is discovery and I'm required to hand over to the other side." The client is all, "How the frick am I cheating? We're separated." And Mike is all, "Cheating is any bedroom contact before divorce is final. It's in your prenup that you wrote on your own." And the guy flipped out. He ended up being so mad he ditched court, which gave him a default judgment, meaning she gets everything she asked for, plus because of the cheating, plus not showing up, the judge ordered the transfer of money within 30 days, as part of the initial agreement between both parties. And he's not there to contest it, so blam. The guy ended up trying to sneak the company to the new woman via a trust, but it's an illegal move. He also tried to hide the money with her by giving her $1.1 million in cash, in the form of a bank transfer, but the judge stopped that once he found out and required the woman repay the money since she was given notice as well. He fought for years and ended up losing money, time, energy, his business, house, 6 to 7 cars, and his new wife. Now, because I know his daughter from work, he's a retired angry man living in rural New Mexico. He can't afford to golf more than once a month, and he posts about how women are scum. What an absolute moron. You can't think that he was a genius of the business world if he did such a colossally stupid job of overseeing and signing these binding documents. Probably another one of these, quote, self-made men who actually just inherited it all. Sucks to suck. I was in the jury for a 3-defendant murder trial. We sat through weeks of testimony, and from the sheer amount of direct evidence the state had, it was extraordinarily obvious very early on that Defendant 1 had committed the crime. Defendant 2, Defendant 1's brother, and Defendant 3, their girlfriend, were much less obvious, and we were being asked by the state to consider circumstantial evidence to draw the conclusion they wanted us to. That is, until Defendant 3 decided to take the stand. Defendant 3's attorney did a very good job of painting her as the victim of the other's treatment. Her attorney had us feeling sorry for this poor, unintelligent woman who had been groomed since she was 16 by a man 20 years her senior. From the attorney's narrative, Defendant 3 was basically Defendant 1's slave. He controlled what she wore, what she did, and even who she talked to. He even made her get a tattoo saying she was Defendant 1's property. We saw a text about Defendant 1 killing Defendant 3's puppy because she made him mad about something small. We had seen texts from Defendant 3 to Defendant 1 cheering him on after he'd sent her pictures of a bloody knife, the murder weapon, but her attorneys had us questioning if those words were just her playing the role of supportive partner so he didn't come after her next. We were starting to believe that she was terrified for her own safety and that's why she didn't report her boyfriend. I mean, clearly this man was a maniac and it seemed reasonable that she just didn't know how to escape him. Then another defendant's attorneys and the DA tore her apart on cross-examination. They made her look argumentative. tripped her up in multiple lies, and by the time they were done, based on her own testimony, it was pretty clear that she did in fact know the victim and had been the one to plan the entire murder. Shoot, we'd even started to feel like she'd probably manipulated defendant 1 more than he manipulated her. The other defendants did not take the stand, perhaps smartly. When we went to deliberations, we all discussed how bad of an idea it was for her to testify. We'd decided defendant 1 was guilty on all counts within the first 5 minutes. Defendant 3 was almost as quick. We decided that while she didn't physically commit the murder, she had conspired and was just as culpable, whatever the formal charge for that was. Defendant 2 took the longest. We all felt pretty strongly that he was somehow involved, but that the DA had not met their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, so we had to return a not guilty verdict on all counts. I used to work at a workman's comp firm, and let me tell you, the people who hurt themselves after they've started getting comp, oftentimes doing stuff around the house, falling off a ladder, using tools, going horseback riding, stuff like that. They get hurt again and the insurance company is off the hook. And many of them get their doctors to write notes saying they're fine so that they can work, because they're bored at home with a huge injury, and then they're baffled that they don't get workman's comp anymore. Then they overexert themselves because of the injury that isn't better. Had a domestic violence case. For months, we went to preparatory hearings and gathering evidence and got restraining orders. By the time the trial was finally happening, on the same morning of the hearing, the person I'd represented let me know that she'd gone on holidays with the defendant for a couple of weeks and had a grand old time. At that point, the opposing counsel approached me and told me he had lots of evidence of both parties having a great time together. This of course doesn't mean the awful stuff didn't happen in the past, but it really undermined our case where we had little evidence other than some testimonials. At that point, I had to explain to her how even beyond strict legal rules, the judge could potentially change her mind once she saw the claimant was out partying with the defendant, for whom a restraining order was requested. We settled and avoided the trial. I'm not a trial lawyer, but a real estate one. I had clients spend 15 grand on new lounge furniture and 4 TVs with their closing money 48 hours before I was due to close for them. I'm pretty sure that losing a $5 million defamation case and then immediately making more statements and having it raised to $90 million is pretty far up the list. Custody case. The mom was bat crap crazy and flew that flag when she was recorded saying she was going to drive her SUV off the highest bridge in our city, with 3 kids in the car. Days like that killed pieces of my soul. I handle work comp claims. This one always cracks me up. The guy claims bilateral wrist injuries from repetitive motion cutting meat. We get word, aka he posted on Facebook, about him competing in an MMA-style event. We send our surveillance there, which gets this guy fighting with no issues. Sounds like if for some reason the narrator is ever living in the States and fraudulently claiming workers' comp, all I have to do is continue my current lifestyle. Stay indoors, never go outside, never post on social media, and play video games to pass the time until the case is won. So how do so many other people screw it up so badly? It was a credit card fraud case in the early part of my career. He actually wore the stolen clothes to court, and a clerk at the defrauded store identified them in front of the jury. I felt like the guy in the commercial that asks, "Do you ever want to be somewhere else?" My uncle used to be a prison manager at the local prison in the area of New Zealand where I grew up. They had hearings when the prisoners had done something against the rules. They'd go before a couple of prison workers and explain, kind of like an internal hearing, I guess. Uncle was the judge for a lot of these. One guy had been found with a cell phone, denied up and down that it was his, that he didn't know where it came from, all that stuff. My uncle asked him several times if he wanted to own up, and he absolutely insisted the phone wasn't his. So my uncle said, "Alright, well someone's wasted $100 on a phone then." And the prisoner then said, "Oh, get fricked, I paid $600 for that." My uncle just glared at him. Oh, I miss his work stories. Client returns to court drunk after luncheon adjournment, falls asleep, and his head drops right into the side of the witness box, whereupon he proceeds to snore. Loudly. Client charged with DUI, forced by police to give a urine sample on the side of a very busy interstate highway. Any sympathy the jury might have had for the defendant was lost, however, when he fell asleep during the playing of the video of the traffic stop. He had been out all night partying the night before trial. He was found guilty. Then he lied to the judge about what would be in his system during a substance test, and his sentence was doubled. When did you get wrecked for trying to do a good thing for an ungrateful jerk? Last night, my friends and I found a woman's wallet on the sidewalk in downtown Athens, Georgia. The driver's license had a name and date of birth, and she had a University of Georgia student card. We looked her up in the UGA directory and called her to return the wallet. She was grateful and we felt like heroes. Well, guess what? She showed up to meet us with her tough guy boyfriend who smelled like a brewery and accused us of stealing it. They tried to interrogate us for 5 minutes straight as we attempted to hand them the wallet and leave. We were baffled. We're 6 well-dressed UGA alumni and students, 2 females, 4 males, some in their 30s, working professionals, who had driven to meet her voluntarily to return the wallet. And she thought we were the thieves. It was unreal. They claimed $500 was missing from the wallet. Our immediate response was, "You carry around $500 in your wallet?" The boyfriend became irate and screamed, "Y'all ain't going nowhere till I found out which one of you frickin' gay slurs took it." Exact quote. Again, there were 6 of us there and 1 of him. Needless to say, we weren't intimidated. The girlfriend looked scared. I diffused the situation, separated everyone, and got the heck out of there. Anyone else ever do something nice that not only goes unappreciated, but you actually suffer for it? Tell me, what's your best no good deed goes unpunished story? I found a cell phone in the middle of the street. Nobody was around, so I figured I should check the contacts to find out who owned it. I figured home was a safe bet. I call and start talking after they pick up, only to be torn apart by the owner's mum, who thinks that I've stolen it. Apparently, the phone was lost the day before and they were looking. Anyways, the dude who owned it gave me $30 for returning it and $10 for, quote, dealing with his mum. So my good deed was punished, but I got a reward for being punished. Yay? In line at a 7-Eleven behind an elderly woman. She pays for her things and leaves. There's a banana sitting on the counter. The cashier looks up and calls out, "Miss, your banana," but she doesn't hear. I bolt after her and catch up quickly. "Hey, I think you left your banana inside." She turns to me and glares. "I didn't want the banana, you little bag of crap," and continues walking away. I found a wallet outside on a patio by the smokers area at a bar one time. So, as a smoker, I just hung out outside and asked everyone that came back out if they lost their wallet. One girl was like, "Oh my god, I did?" And I asked her to describe it. She did. I pulled it out and she was like, You took my freaking wallet." And I said, no, it was sitting on that bench right there. I figured it was better if I tried to find the owner rather than just let it sit there on a busy Friday night. She said, "I have every right to call the cops." I just said, "All right, wow, try to do a nice thing for someone? Whatever," and I threw her wallet into the parking lot and went back inside the bar. She called me a homophobic slur and told the bouncer to, quote, throw that guy out because I stole her wallet. The bouncer was standing on the patio the whole time and saw the freak out, and even the bouncer said he was only trying to help, and then he just ignored her ranting. I went inside and never heard or saw anything from her ever again. Okay, that's our second paranoid or scam artist ungrateful jerk who used that particular derogatory term that we can't say on YouTube, beginning with F. So there you have it. The correlation between stupidity and prejudice against the gays is very real. I found a dog, a pit bull, wandering in my neighborhood along a busy street. I hopped out of my car and put my dog's spare collar on him to keep him from being hit. I walked to all the nearby houses and knocked on the doors asking if anybody belonged to the dog or if they knew who did. After about 10 houses, I gave up and took him home. That afternoon, I made found dog flyers, without the dog's picture, about 100 in all, and put them up around the area. In front of my house, I put a big one so people would know that this was the place. After a few days, I'd pretty much resigned myself to keeping the guy when I got a phone call. This lady gave a perfect description of the dog, and I told her she could swing by and pick him up. About an hour later, she shows up with the cops. She gets out of her car and greets me with, "Are you the butthole that stole my dog?" I was, of course, taken aback. I stood there with a slack jaw, not knowing what to say. "I asked you a question. Did you steal my dog?" "What? No. I found a dog and tried to find his home." "You stole him and I have witnesses." She then tried to get the officer to arrest me. It only took a few moments for the officer to realize that she was in fact crazy. "So he stole your dog, asked all of your neighbors who the dog belonged to, put up signs saying that he had the dog, and then invited you over to take the dog back. Ma'am, either he's the worst criminal in the world or you don't understand the definition of stole." She then claimed that I stole the dog for the reward money. The officer said he didn't see an offer for a reward, nor did I ask for one. "But just out of curiosity, how much reward money were you going to offer?" asked the officer. $200. That's what he wants. That's why he took the dog. Well, we have no evidence of him stealing the dog, but it seems to me that he's earned the reward. That was the worst $200 I ever earned. I used to work for Walmart. Not once did a good deed go unpunished. If ever I found a wallet or purse, I'd carry it by the corner at arm's length and open it looking for an ID while under a camera, still keeping it at arm's length. That way, when they accused me of stealing, which I would never do, there was plenty of video coverage to protect me. Same with cell phones. I'd always look for a contact, mum or dad first. If I couldn't find one, I'd check recent calls. But I would always handle the thing like plutonium. I managed a pool for 10 years. It had a zero-depth area where the water got gradually deeper, like a beach. This was also the area with all the kiddie toys. Parents would send their toddlers out there on their own while they chatted, read, or sunbathed. The thing was like a succubus for toddlers, and 3 or 4 of them would go under daily, resulting in my guards or me going in and saving the lives of these children, lest they see Davy Jones' locker. The parents basically thought we were babysitters and didn't give a damn about their children while they were swimming. At least once a week, I'd have to deal with some parent flipping out about how their kid was fine and we had no right to touch them. Threats were made about cops and lawyers. Luckily, we always had a patrolman on duty at our pool. He'd laugh in their faces and threaten to arrest them for neglect, which usually shut them up. Once, one of my 98-pound female lifeguards saved 2 kids at the same time. Her reward? A smack across the face from an irate mother. I've never seen a cop react so fast. I missed that job. In short, watch your frickin' kids while they're at the pool. I was on the bus and I noticed some guy on his BlackBerry. Then I dozed off for a few minutes and I woke up and noticed the guy had left his phone on the bus. I picked it up and tried to find a number in it that I could dial to let him know I had it. I checked his Facebook and saw he had updated his status from home saying some thug on the bus robbed him. He also said how horrible people are in LA, how it's a city filled with thieves and stuff like that. I updated his status, correcting him and letting him know that I had it and I could send it to him. He emailed me his address and I mailed it to him. He didn't even send a thank you email back. The guy was a prick. I stopped a man beating a woman at a bar. Instead, the woman started to hit me along with the guy. Then at the end, the man beat the woman again, saying he didn't need her help. I live in an area with fairly low-priced rentals, so it's full of college kids and people who are of lower incomes. I was at the corner store and the family in front of me had a case of beer, a 12-pack of Coke, a few packs of cigarettes, chicken nuggets, macaroni and cheese, and some milk. Their debit card got denied, so they took out the milk. Got denied again, took out the chicken. Got denied again, took out the mac and cheese. Finally, their purchase was approved, so they were going home with beer, Coke, and cigs. Their 2 kids, maybe 4 and 6, asked what they were having for dinner if they didn't have the chicken and nuggets. The mother's response was, "You can drink Coke, it's got calories." The younger kids started crying for the chicken nuggets. The mum grabbed her by the arm and told her she wasn't getting any dinner. I brought their chicken nuggets and ran after them. I tried to give them the box, and the mum started screaming at me, "Do we look like a fricking charity case? I can raise my own fricking kids. You don't know what it's like being a mum," and tons of other bullcrap. I was like, just take the goddamn chicken, your kids are hungry. The woman hit the box out of my hands, and she and her man grabbed the kids and stormed away. I wish I'd followed them and called CPS or something. Eesh, yeah, those kids need to be with people who put them before their own unneeded comforts. Coke and cigarettes should be some way under your children getting fed properly on your priority list. So, I was outside this fast food place that sold hot dogs. I saw a homeless woman with a shopping cart trying to come out of the joint. She was struggling to open the door, so I did the gentlemanly thing and held the door open for her. I didn't know if that hobo was on smack or something, but she started yelling at me, telling me that she didn't need any help and told me to F right off. I let go of the door, it smacked her right in the face. I went shopping for a Halloween party with 2 friends from work. At the grocery store, one of the girls lost her wallet. We tore apart my car looking for it, went back into the store and looked everywhere. We never found it. 2 days later, I was back on that side of town, and I decided to go in and check for it in Lost and Found. We lived pretty far from that store, and she had no means of transportation. Somebody had found it. So, they let me take it to return it to her. Well, she wasn't too excited when I showed up at work with it. She was acting weird. I guess she and the other friend decided I was playing her the whole time. Like I was hiding it so I could be the hero and return it to her. Lesson learned. I'm a girl, by the way, not a guy white knighting this other girl. We all worked together at Target. She was 19, I was 30. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Caution, this one is sad. My uncle's best friend is a man named Terry. Terry was a large man and quite the bruiser. In the mid-90s, Terry was at a local dive bar when he hears a man screaming at a woman. He really rips into her, spewing obscenities loudly across the bar. Terry steps in, tells the guy to keep it down, or to take it home. Nobody wants to hear their problems. The girl runs off to the bathroom crying, and the man apologizes to Terry, telling him, "Sorry man, I just found out she cheated on me." The guy promises to keep it down, and Terry walks away. When the girl comes back from the bathroom, the yelling resumes, and the guy hauls off and hits her. The girl runs off, and Terry comes charging over to give the guy an ultimatum. Terry offers to kick the crap out of the guy or let him walk out on his own. The guy chooses the latter. A couple of minutes pass, and the bar phone rings. It's a call for Terry. Terry picks up the phone and almost instantly drops to the floor in agony. The man went across the street to a payphone, called the bar, asked for Terry, then snuck back in and stabbed him 3 times in the back, making him a paraplegic. The guy took off running, but was caught later. Being that Terry was a big biker with a bunch of big biker friends, the man had fled for fear of retaliation, then turned himself in. Terry is and always will be in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down, all for standing up for a girl who was getting beat up by her boyfriend. A buddy of mine blew the motor in his truck. I knew of an engine 200 miles away that would be a good replacement, so I drive there, pay $250 to load it in my truck and drive it back. I leave the motor at the local shop and it gets put in the truck. 1 week later, he sells the truck and never pays me for the motor. He had cancer, so I wasn't about to use him as a kickball. He died 6 years ago. The cancer was the reason I went out of my way to help. I lent a very good friend about $500. His parents were fairly well off, and I knew his parents sent him a huge check every birthday because we'd always travel right after he got the check. It was an annual 10 grand gift the parents are allowed to distribute tax-free to their kids. So I knew I'd get it back in a few weeks. Being mindful, I told him under no uncertain terms that this was a loan and expected to be paid back by X date. Period. He agreed. Well, payback date came and passed and nothing. Yet his birthday was about 2 weeks afterwards. So I waited until after his birthday. Still no check. I called him on it and asked what happened. I got lie after lie. First, his checking account was compromised, then he needed to order checks. Then he was waiting for his parents' check to arrive. He even went so far as to send me a check on a closed account, which was stupid because I knew from talking to him the account was closed and he didn't bank there anymore, and it had his old address on it from 2 years ago. I asked him why he'd sent me a check on a closed account, and I got yelled at for, quote, not being a good friend, and for not being supportive of his problems. I was very nice to him up until this point, but I let him have it. I'm not a good friend. I lend you $500 so you can pay your rent and don't say a word about it for weeks, and you say I'm not supportive. A good friend would pay me back without the lies and forcing me to call you and ask you for the money. I had a check in the mail the same week and I haven't talked to him since. If you're reading this, screw you. I helped 2 guys out of a crushed car, putting my life in danger as the gas was spilling out. They ran away as soon as I got them out. Turns out the car was stolen and the police were onto them. The cops found me on top of the car holding the door open and arrested me. I spent the night in jail for that good deed. Another time I worked in a restaurant at the beach. As I was closing, I saw a kid wandering around crying. I abandoned my work and stayed with her for 4 hours or something, calling the cops, trying out numbers that she remembers, stuff like that. When the cops and the parents finally came, they started interrogating me like I'd kidnapped her or something. After some time, I got angry and started shouting, and they just told me to go away. Not even a thank you or anything. Another time, a guy in front of me at the ATM left a full wallet on the machine and walked away. I wasn't paying attention to him, so I didn't even notice what he was wearing. So I took the wallet into the bank and explained at the counter what had happened. There's a wad of cash in there. I say I have to leave, but was asked politely at first that I have to stay until they contact the owner. I say I have to leave. I had something important to do. Instead, the security guys detain me for like 30 minutes until the owner shows up. He says everything is in there. I'm just standing there. Nobody told him that I found it. They just told me, you can leave now. I had dreadlocks all these times and my skin color is of the darker kind, so maybe that played a role. Maybe not. I just continue doing good when I can, and most of the time, it's appreciated. I was at the mall, and some little boy came up to me, asking, "Can you help me find my mummy?" I walked him over to the security desk and had them page her. She showed up 30 minutes later and then got all angry at me, acting like I was some kind of weird predator. She then stormed off with her unfortunate son, but not before he yelled, "Thanks, mister," to me. I feel bad for that kid. Well, at least her kid was a civilized person, even if she wasn't. I was about to say that maybe we can give her the benefit of the doubt as a concerned parent, but then I remember you saying that it took her 30 minutes to come and collect her kid in the same mall. So I guess the odds of her just being trash rose substantially again. This is why when I found someone's bank card lying in the street, I picked it up, handed it in at the bank the next day, and got out of there quickly. I didn't want to be arrested for stealing, for helping some poor student who'd lost their card. It was obviously a student, it had been lost outside the university nightclub. I'm writing this as the witness of the punishers. So my boyfriend and I had just graduated, and were naturally receiving some cards in the mail. Some with money, some without, whatever. Anyways, my boyfriend has this grandpa who inherited a ton of money way back when, and has since invested, by which I mean lost, most of it in the stock market. The family always rants about how he doesn't give a crap about them and tries to milk him for money. He bought their 2 cars before he lost a bunch of his money. My boyfriend received a card from him with no money in it, and laughed at the snarky message. Money is fleeting, knowledge is power, and seemed happy enough. A few days later, his mum was making a list of everyone who sent him cards. She even writes down how much each person sent, as if that would determine the extent of her thank you, and compares the amounts. When the grandpa comes up and she remembers he didn't send any money, she doesn't write his name down. Apparently she planned to only send thank yous to the people who sent cash. She and her husband then proceeded to bitterly remark, with the biggest eye rolls possible, that since the grandpa had decided to help pay for my boyfriend's college education, they guessed that made up for it. As someone who hasn't seen or heard from my grandparents and the majority of my extended family since I was 5 due to family pettiness, I was teed off. When I was 17, a gust of wind ripped my car door out of my hand and into the car that I was parked next to. I went into the store and had the manager call for the owner of the car using the description and license plate number. Nobody came forward. I went back out to the parking lot and waited for the owner to show up. When the owners arrived, I told them I was sorry that I'd dinged the side of their door. I showed them the small dent and offered to exchange insurance information. The wife was a straight-up witch. She started huffing and puffing, walking around her car and finding other dents in her fender, rear quarter panel, places that it would have been impossible for my door to have caused damage. I told her that I didn't cause any of the other stuff and she should be lucky that I was an honest person, as most people would have just found another parking spot and not told her at all. Her husband came to my rescue and calmed her down and explained that I couldn't have caused the other dents. He even opened up my door to show it wasn't possible. She went on and wanted to exchange insurance info. Her husband ushered her into their car and told me to just go. He said he wasn't worried about the dent I caused and thanked me for being so honest. As they were pulling away, his wife glared at me until I was out of sight. I had a letter in my mailbox, so I opened it as I tend to do with things I find in my mailbox. I hadn't realized that the name on the envelope was someone I'd never heard of, but the address was correct except there was a unit number even though I live in a townhouse. It was 3 passports and cash with a letter from Canada Customs and Immigration. I decided to take a shot in the dark and try the building across the street and found her name in the building directory. She came down and proceeded to give me crap for opening her letter. I told her it was an accident and that everything was in there, but it had no effect on her. I said, "No problem, any future letters for you will go in the garbage unopened," and I walked away. But even if I did get another letter for her, I'd probably still drop it off. I have a few of one of my ex-best friends taking advantage. One that comes to mind is that he was behind on some money, and I let him borrow my netbook to Skype with his wife while he went overseas. It ended up getting smashed or broken somehow, and he wasn't able to pay me back when he returned. But he'd bought himself a new laptop and tons of stuff for himself before paying me a dime. I also let him borrow my 360 while I was overseas so his kid and he could play, since it was just going to be sitting in a garage anyway. I never saw that thing again because evidently it was stolen. That's just a few things of a whole laundry list of things I've done for that guy, but I think a lot of it was my own fault for not being more mindful of him and how he exploited my weakness towards helping friends out. I managed to get $100 out of him for my netbook. It cost around $250, and that was about the end of our friendship. I have a hard time doing good deeds for people after that happened. There was this huge scandal in China a while back while I was living in Shanghai. An elderly woman was crossing the street and was hit by a guy on a scooter. She fell down and was injured while the man who hit her drove off. A man nearby saw what happened and came over to help her and offered to take her to the hospital. The old lady freaked out and started accusing the man of hitting her, which he didn't. Her response was, "Why are you offering to help me if you didn't knock me down in the first place?" She pressed charges and took him to court, and it was a media frenzy in China. I don't know what actually happened from the court cases, since, the Chinese tend to make these news stories mysteriously disappear if it gains too much attention. Between these answers and the ones about encountering horrible customers, I have the sudden urge to murder people. Lawyers. Which fictional villain would be a slam dunk to defend in court? Robbie Rotten. His crimes mostly just aren't? Does Dr. Doom even need a legal defense? As the ruler of his own country, does diplomatic immunity cover all of his actions? That's how he keeps getting away with things in the comics, right? He's the legal sovereign leader of a respected modern country, so he can't be arrested for fear of provoking a war. They did try a few times, replacing him with someone who has better legal right to the country, but they always turn out to be crazy tyrants, as opposed to Dr. Doom, who's generally at least a reasonable dictator. So he usually wins it back. Provided you can put up with his egotism and restrictions, the overall standard of living seems pretty good. The trains are almost certainly running on time. Plus, before Doom, it was a backwater, tiny Eastern European nation that changed hands every few decades to increasingly worse options. Now it's a major global superpower with some of the most advanced technology on the planet. Whatever your opinion on Doom personally, on some level, that must feel good. Most of the old-school Scooby-Doo villains, they didn't really do anything other than scare people off their private property. Most of them were doing so for illegal reasons, though, like insurance fraud or tax evasion or whatever. When I was a kid, I remember being devastated in the movie Big Daddy when the social worker took Zack and Cody away from Adam Sandler. But after watching it again as an adult, although I'm still sad, I'm thinking, yeah, fricking of course they're going to take him away from this stranger. So the social worker from Big Daddy is a layup case. Not to mention Sandler's character literally lied to social services so his unemployed, lazy butt could have a child. That guy should have been arrested. In the same vein, Mrs. Doubtfire. Daniel couldn't hold down a job or apartment, so of course he wasn't in a position to have joint custody. But then he literally dresses up as an old woman and deceives his entire family to have time with his kids. Then they take the kids away, of course they're going to remove the children from someone who's unstable enough to see assuming a new identity and lying to my whole family as a better alternative to get my crap together so I can see my kids. Definitely Lex Luthor. 99% of the time he uses henchmen who won't talk, and he can definitely pay my exorbitant bills. We're going to get a lot of variation on the answers here today, and I think this one, the villain who is definitely in the wrong, but very good at concealing it and would be a great repeat client, is a very interesting answer. And classic lawyer, defending a scumbag if the bill is high enough. Who am I kidding? I'd probably burn down a kindergarten for that sort of money. Mojo Jojo. This one is good because typically animals can't commit crimes. They'd have to establish legal personhood first. Animals may not be capable of committing crimes, but then they have no civil rights either, such as a right to trial or to legal representation. If you rely on non-personhood as a defense, he gets sent to a zoo at best, or at worst, put down. It's the defense that wants to prove personhood, not the state. I could mount a pretty solid wrongful death case on behalf of the boy who cried wolf. Bucky Barnes or the Winter Soldier. I think the insanity defense, though it's not called that anymore, would actually apply here. Get a group of certified expert psychiatrists and doctors together, get their testimony and depositions, set a competency hearing, and in the event he's deemed competent, use witness testimony and the USSR and Hydra documentation to prove he wasn't in charge of his actions. Boom. Done. In my jurisdiction, I'd say Damien from The Omen. Minimum age for delinquency adjudication is 12, and in the first movie he's 5, so he couldn't be tried for any of his evil doings. Plus, it's not illegal to be the devil's offspring, particularly when the devil himself is a lawyer. We all know about Devil's Advocate, right? Dr. Doofenshmirtz. All of his inventions ultimately only end up stealing or damaging the creations of 2 kids, so he could probably be let out with a theft charge. Really, he's just a very lonely, unloved man trying to be seen in the world. Good thing he has his therapy platypus. In some cases, his inventions could actually benefit society. I'm pretty sure there was one episode where someone took one of his inniters and it became a machine used by eye doctors to fix eye problems. Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove. He does technically kidnap Cusco, but I think we could get his sentence way reduced. Get enough character witnesses and you're golden. I think he could charm the jury. Or just completely blow up his own case in the stand. It could be a fun surprise. Just show them the movie. Even in the scenes where he literally commits a crime, he still seems to be a good person. He just works for a terrible person and is dumb as a rock. He could be reformed by a simple change of employer. The Wicked Witch of the West. She was angry at Dorothy, but then again, Dorothy dropped a house on her sister and then grave-robbed the witch's sister's body with Glinda's help. The shoes were rightfully the witch's anyway, presuming she was her sister's only heir and her sister died intestate. You could argue that all the witch wanted was for Dorothy to apologize and return the slippers she stole. Everything else that happened was the result of the witch's reasonable attempts to defend herself and her property against Dorothy's killing, theft, and trespass. It would depend on the legal status of Dorothy's companions. I'm pretty sure that you can't attempt to burn someone to death like she does to the Scarecrow, just because they're traveling with someone who stole your shoes, even if they are attempting to prevent you from harming the person carrying stolen property. But the witch didn't actually set him on fire, though. She just sent down a fireball near him. You might be able to argue tortious assault or reasonable foreseeability leading to culpability for negligence, but it doesn't appear to be intentional battery. And she could argue that she was using the tools at her disposal to persuade Dorothy to return the slippers. I want to defend the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. The velociraptors are probably sociopaths. They were raised in an alien environment by people who had no idea how their species rears their young and probably conditioned to act in a certain way for the entertainment of tourists. I'm not surprised they turned out to be aggressive monsters. Rumpelstiltskin did nothing wrong. It would have helped if the agreement was in writing. I'm also not familiar with adoption laws. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't fly in a surrogate situation in my state either. But I know if the contract was for anything legal other than a baby, he'd have a solid case. The bears in Goldilocks. Or is Goldilocks the villain there? Breaking and entering? Theft? Yeah, Goldilocks is the villain, and it would be very hard to defend her since she was found at the scene of the crime. Many countries have laws in place allowing a person in a situation, such as being lost in the wilderness, to commit property crimes for the sake of survival. Essentially, if you're freezing and starving in the woods and come across a cabin, you can break in, get warm, and raid the kitchen. Be sure to check local laws before getting lost in the woods. They might require you to just fricking die instead. Probably Gaston, since hunting a beast that's a threat to members of your own town isn't a crime. Remember, Beast did lock up Belle's dad, and there's no reason to believe Beast couldn't go evil again during the inevitable divorce. If you mean the one I'm going to most enjoy defending, then pick the richest one. It's a criminal client. Write me a check and don't call me every damn 10 minutes from the jail, and I'm a happy camper. Also, for Gaston, the whole town was in on the angry mob. Try finding an impartial jury in that small provincial town. Smaug. He had to be considered an adverse possessor of the property after all that time, and the House of Durin did abandon the property. I think he had a right to defend his home. Although I'll admit, maybe I'm holding out for a statute of limitations on the whole burning the city thing when he first arrived. The bad guy attorney in the B movie would have killed the case if any actual lawyering occurred. He went to court against a bug and an insane woman. The whole case was kangaroo from the beginning. The funniest part of that movie is that the entire trial is watched by a jury, and then the judge just rules in favor of the plaintiff at the end. What the heck was there a jury there for? Also, two attorneys attack each other and a witness tries to kill a crossing attorney, which are both grounds for a mistrial. Well, a lot of these more cartoony ones get a lot more funny if you imagine a real lawyer sitting in the court absolutely gobsmacked about the shenanigans going on. I want to see how a real-life court reacts if a judge grossly oversteps their powers this way. Everybody's favorite, Gaston. The beast is basically kidnapping people, and you can argue that he's violent. Heck, the entire village was on Gaston's side and would acquit him. No one frames like Gaston, dodges claims like Gaston. No one's legal team shifts all the blame like Gaston. It's kind of scary how little of what went on in The Truman Show would actually be illegal in the real world. There's a few fringe cases, most notably actively preventing Truman from leaving once he realized he was in a fake world and expressed a desire to escape, but pretty much everything up to that point is very legal. and it would be hard to press charges against the director or anyone else for the basic premise of raising a child in a reality show without their knowledge. Seems like a very easy case of invasion of privacy, probably a handful of other niche torts. Maybe unlawful hiring, employment practices, and failing to pay an employee wages. Very good points, and there's actually a great podcast called Ad Absurdum that goes into it in more detail. A lot of the stuff can be gotten around through a couple of things. First, the corporation in the movie is Truman's legal parent and as such can sign away most of his rights on his behalf until he's an adult. Second, it wouldn't be hard to raise Truman to not value his privacy, making it easy to get him to sign it away once he turns 18. Third, they could be paying him a salary and just putting it into an account in his name, including the fine print in his employment contract, which he signed that includes television appearances. And finally, Truman could probably take them to the cleaners in civil court, but it would be hard to stick many of the criminal charges. I think it would be fun defending Saul from Better Call Saul. Ursula, that freedom of contract all day. Ariel was a minor and she signed the contract without a parent or guardian present. I'll see you in court. What about her using hench shields to disrupt the other party to the contract? That contract was not made in good faith, since she went out of her way to personally stop Ariel from being able to fulfill it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Probably Palpatine. Republic law doesn't apply because he can bend it. Also, as Supreme Chancellor, he probably has immunity. Imperial law doesn't apply either because I assume he's untouchable there. And real-world law could also be tricky. All of his dirty work was done by his students who were conveniently dead. Good luck proving they did anything on his orders. Being a Sith Lord isn't a crime because of freedom of religion, right? His fight against the Jedi was self-defense as it was an attack against him with religious motives. Even the killing of Hago Damask would be impossible to prove as there were no witnesses and nobody even knew they were on Coruscant together. And the creation of the Empire was approved by the Senate. He didn't even abduct Maul, he was given to him. The most realistic thing would be conspiracy to destroy the Republic or something, but it sounds like a conspiracy theory to claim that there was this big Sith rule of two thing going on for centuries. And even if it got to trial somehow, if it is a jury trial, the opposition would have a very hard time. The Joker. Your Honor, my client, who is clearly suffering from schizophrenic delusions and various other mental issues, was punched in the face by a billionaire in a rubber gimp suit. And worse, the Gotham City Police Commissioner asked him to do it. I don't think you could save the Joker from legal repercussions with the insanity plea. For insanity, your client would need to either not realize what they were doing or not be able to realize that what they were doing was considered wrong by the law. The Joker is clearly aware of what he's doing and he's aware that it's wrong. That said, you could probably get Bruce Wayne charged for vigilantism, and you could probably get Commissioner Gordon fired for working with Batman. Scar. Yes, he murdered his brother, attempted to murder his nephew, and turned his entire family into slaves, but he's a cat. Just show some of his baby pictures to the jury, a few videos of him trying to eat Zazu, and after a few, he'd walk away as a free cat. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client was just cat-pushing something off a ledge. The evil stepmother from Cinderella. The worst thing she did was make Cinderella work a lot, but if she's old enough to marry, then she's old enough to help out around the house. Also, women had fewer rights. There's probably not a crime she even committed against Cinderella. I'd argue that the stepmother emotionally abused her, though. It wasn't just making her work a lot, it was making her do all the work, while the stepsisters didn't have to, so neglecting one child while the others are treated better. Also, from what I remember, they destroy her dress and lock her in her room against her will. I feel like Ganondorf would be a nice pick. According to the laws of the Hylian world, he's just supposed to be doing evil stuff all the time. The curse has to be fulfilled through generations. There's always a hero, an evil person, and a goddess. Kinda like a contract, eh? A theory I like about Ganondorf is that he's as much cursed as Link and Zelda are. A perpetuous cycle of fights between good and evil just because one dude thousands of years ago was annoyed about losing against a 17-year-old. I'm not a lawyer, but Sauron. He was simply trying to get a treasure that was stolen from him while employing orcs whom the rest of the races are very racist towards. Well, clearly, this theory is ignoring the fact that he's explicitly instructing these poor disenfranchised orcs to commit property damage, murder, and holding numerous war camps without proper sanitation or obeisance of noise control ordinances. A follow-up comment makes yet another good point that opens up the possibility for a great show about Sauron's legal exploits after the Rings of Power inevitably falls through. I mean, once the Ring of Power left the borders of Mordor, he'd had to follow the rules and laws of whichever country he was attempting to reacquire the ring from. Ursula. Basic contract action. Ariel might have been a minor, but that only makes the contract voidable, not invalid. At no point did Ariel ask to void the contract. Instead, her father decided to sign his own contract. King Triton is a sophisticated party who entered into a binding contract. King Triton was the one who was willing to throw his kingdom away to bail out his favorite daughter. You also have a good estoppel argument because Ariel materially benefited from the contract, which oftentimes can supersede the voidability question with minors. Tulkinghorn from Bleak House, Old Man Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, Cruella de Vil. I would never take a case involving Dr. House or Sherlock Holmes, though. Good luck having Cruella on the stand and not having the jury turn against you. Hans from Frozen. I'm not a lawyer, but he basically wanted to legally become ruler of a kingdom through marriage. You could make a credible case that Elsa was a threat to the kingdom and that she was unfit to rule since she accidentally harmed her own sister. Hans going after her was an effort to protect the kingdom. He even stopped a henchman from shooting her in the chest, so he was clearly trying to use the least amount of violence necessary. I'm not a lawyer, but Jason Voorhees is defending himself from trespassers. Thanos, because he did nothing wrong. I knew this one was going to come up. I mean, he did kill Vision. At the very least, it's property damage. I'm not a lawyer, but Umbridge from Harry Potter because she never committed a single crime. In fact, she changed rules and laws specifically so she could do what she did. The worst action she committed was making Harry write with a quill that scarred him. However, we know from Filch that corporal punishment within schools is still allowed in the wizarding world, and the only reason it doesn't continue at Hogwarts is because Dumbledore doesn't allow it. With Dumbledore gone, the headmistress is well within her rights to bring back the practice. Ed Rooney from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's just trying to do his job. I would not want to defend the actor who played him, of course. Rooney was probably fine until the end of the movie when he attempted to break into the Bueller's house. Did he actually enter? Now I'm forgetting that scene. Actually, Cracked.com pointed out that because Ferris's parents called him out of school, the absence was excused no matter what the heck Ferris did with it. Ferris could have gone on the field at Wrigley and hit the game-winning home run and dedicated the win to Rooney himself and then drove to the school and handed Rooney the game ball, and Rooney could do two things. Nothing and like it. Norman Bates. Could not be an easier insanity plea, and if I had to go to trial, I could just find one juror who hated his mother. Professor Pig from Batman. That dude is actually crazier than the Joker. Well, the human experimentation bit seems like it would be a bit difficult to defend. Squidward. He just wanted a calm life with a clarinet, but SpongeBob and Patrick kept annoying him, not giving a chill and calm life. Look, Sid from Toy Story is a sadistic kid, but he's a juvenile, and homicide of toys isn't a thing, so that's always helpful. The Joker, because I just play the insanity card and I'm not even a lawyer. The Joker doesn't display the kind of insanity required for that defense to work. Generally, you'd need to show that the defendant didn't know what he was doing, and if he did, didn't understand it was wrong. This would be like if you had delusions that made you think a random passerby was an evil alien coming to destroy Earth and you shot them. The Joker is clearly mentally unwell, but he doesn't seem to have this problem. As I understand the Joker, he just doesn't give a rat's butt about whether he's doing something bad. Being a psychopath or sociopath doesn't make you insane in the way to escape criminal liability. I know you want a lawyer, so this isn't like, how dare you not know this, but I think a lot of people misunderstand the insanity defense as a general rule. It's not just about being mentally ill, it has to be the right kind of insane. Kreese from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. No defense needed since law enforcement basically doesn't exist in that universe. Agatha Harkness. What did she do that was so wrong exactly? The worst I can come up with is that she tried to stop someone with a notoriously out-of-control destructive history from continuing to mind-violate an entire town of people who were clearly traumatized by it. You're not wrong. I mean, she definitely had evil intent and was going to siphon all of that power for evil or something. I wasn't really paying attention. But yeah, if she had beaten Wanda and taken the kudos for stopping a supervillain, she probably would have been good. I'm not a lawyer, but I've got some. If King Boo hadn't gone out of his way to trap the Mario Bros, he could have pressed charges against Professor E. Gadd for imprisoning all of those ghosts into paintings and later trespassing on the mansion he magically created. Nasty Nork was wrongfully banished to a junkyard without due legal process and didn't actually attack the dragons until publicly provoked on live television, in such a way that one could try to frame it as the dragons doing it on purpose, as well as charging the dragons with harassment and neglecting due to process. GLaDOS was improperly programmed, and once the morality core was removed, no longer understood right from wrong, and thus could have a legit insanity plea, as she was programmed to only care about her experiments. Otto from Wall-E would have the same argument. HAL 9000 was acting in self-defense, as the humans on board wanted to shut him down over one single error. Frankenstein's monster was abandoned at birth and treated cruelly his whole life. Plus, he was living basically in the wild with nobody to teach him right from wrong, and thus one could convince the judge he needs psychiatric help. Also, the creature could press child neglect charges onto Victor Frankenstein. It would be hard to convict the Invisible Man, the original, not the crappy 2020 one, from anything because how do you even prove that he was there? And technically, he hadn't gone through with any of the crimes he wanted to commit. Most werewolves have no control over their actions either. Otto Octavius, aka Doc Ock. The neural interface affected his mind. He couldn't do much about it. It was his gallium arms that harmed people, not him. I'm not actually a lawyer, but this would be very hard to go up against, right? If you count Doofenshmirtz as a villain, then he'd be the easiest. I mean, he didn't do anything lasting. Gus Fring, because he'd absolutely have his alibis and defense plans schemed down to the most minute detail. All he would need would be an earnest and detail-oriented storyteller, and I can do that. When did you catch a customer who was totally trying to scam you? A customer said he'd never received a book, so he checked UPS, and it was shipped to a different address. So we called UPS saying, "What the frick?" And they said the customer had called them to change the shipping address and that they had a digital copy of his signature. He denied it was his signature and denied he'd ever called to change the shipping address, and that he'd never even heard of that address. He claimed that we changed the address and we were trying to screw him over. I did some investigating and found out that the new address it shipped to was a business under his name. So I called him up during his business hours, basically saying, "Aha, busted." He then called the police on me saying we were harassing him, so my boss had to talk to the cops, and the cops found out he did in fact receive the books. Good times. I used to work for a furniture company in the mid-90s. One day we got a memo that there was a former coworker who was using stolen cards to do in-store pickups or deliveries to fake addresses, like an apartment or something, but they'd pick up the furniture in the apartment lobby and claim the elevator was broken or something. The FBI was getting involved because it was in the amounts of thousands of dollars across state lines. A few days later, I got a call. A big order. The kind of order that would blow over quota and give me a bonus. "Can you deliver this to New Jersey?" "Oh, sure." I took down the credit card info, then I asked for a callback number so I could relate the shipping info. They hesitated. I said MasterCard required it. Let me give you a Visa then." Okay, I went forward with that info and then said, "Oh, I forgot, Visa needs that as well." "I'll call you back," they said. So I called the home office and told them I think it was those guys. The MO checked out, and they said if they call back, try to get an Amex card, and then don't ask for a callback number, just set up a delivery. And hours later, they called back. Got my assistant, and I told her to just take the order. When it was completed, she had an Amex card order for some ungodly amount. I called the home office and they arranged a sting with the FBI. Later, the drivers told me what had happened. They had to make a rendezvous point where they loaded a bunch of armed agents into the truck. Then, once the woman signed the bill of landing, the FBI goon squad jumped from the truck and arrested her and 4 accomplices without much resistance. Later, MasterCard, Visa, and Amex gave me reward checks for recovering stolen cards. Sweet! Oh, nice deal for you. Maybe the lesson for the potential scammer here is that you should be prepared to walk away if you even get a whiff of the patsy being onto you for something. I do wonder when this story was from and who in the heck isn't cancelling their cards as soon as they go missing, though. Working at Sears in electronics. A lady tries to return a video camera. I open the box to check the merchandise, breaking the seal. She's visibly unhappy about that and asks what I'm doing. I continue to open it. It's a camera several years old in a new box. She pretends to be surprised. Another man brings in a Casio keyboard box. proclaims that he bought it from one of my associates. We do not sell keyboards. I explain that to him. He's angry and asks where he got it from then. I say, okay, and I start to open it. He's very mad. I keep going, and he runs out of the store. It's 3 pieces of plywood. Working fast food one summer, a customer comes up and looks at my name tag, then makes some kind of rhyme out of my name. It was bad sitcom levels of acting. Anyways, he makes a small order, then asks for change for a 20. I was already on alert because of his stupid name thing, so I was paying extra attention to what he was doing. He handed me the money for the order, but kept the 20. He watched me count out the change, then pulled back and asked for it in 5s. When I had the change in my hand, I held out my other hand for the 20. He said he'd already given me the money. I just gave him a blank stare and said, no. He backtracked and was like, I'll just go get change from the gas station across the street. Right. I was in a liquor store buying a 6-pack and witnessed someone pull the I gave you a 20, not a 5 move, to which the cashier showed him the register which had no 20s in it. It's amazing how that did little to appease the person. You gotta learn when to accept defeat, buddy. I work at a grocery store. One day I was bagging up this lady's groceries. She was very pleasant, making both me and the cashier laugh about nothing. As I turn to put her groceries into the exchange cart, we do this to prevent theft, the lady quickly turns to me and says, oh, excuse me, I want them in this cart. The look she gave me was one of those, you better do this or else looks. I'm like, fine, whatever, since I'm only 16, no big deal. I go to place the first bag in the cart when it lands on the edge of an ad that's been sprawled out on the bottom, thus causing it to move a little. I see a little something underneath it, so naturally I pull back the ad. This lady has about $50 worth of meat and seafood underneath the ad. I proceed to ask her, oh ma'am, it seems like you've forgotten to put these on the belt. Do you still want them? Of course, I say this with a little snide in my voice, because even though I'm just 16, I'm not completely stupid and I know what's going on. Oh man, if looks could kill. She curtly said, I never wanted those, put them back for me. She paid for her order as she was saying this, and as she was walking past me with her cart, she gave me a nice, frick you. To this I replied in my most sarcastic voice I could muster, have a great night. She turned around and I had the biggest smile on my face as I waved goodbye. She quickly walked out the door, visibly angry. A week later, my boss promoted me, saying this event was the reason I was getting the promotion. That and some hard-working mumbo-jumbo. In short, a woman tried to steal $50 worth of meat and seafood by draping an ad over it. I stopped her and got promoted. I worked in an insurance call center and a woman phoned up to say she'd spilt bleach on her carpet and needed to replace it. She had the right cover. It was a policy to send an inspector from a cleaning company round to make sure it was a total loss, and this woman happened to live very close to the nearest location. I told her someone would be around to inspect her carpet ASAP and that the depot was 5 minutes away, then started taking details about the accident. She was not happy with all of this, and when I asked her when it had happened, she got all flustered and eventually said, "It hasn't happened yet." Idiot! She had just admitted to insurance fraud, passed on to my boss, got back to answering calls. I always wondered what happened to her. One of my friends was a purser on a cruise ship, and the lengths people would go to get a free room upgrade were astonishing. The best story was a complaint from the passengers about a water leak in their room that had ruined some of their belongings. They wanted an upgrade to first class and announced that they'd be suing for the full replacement costs of all of their suitcases and the stuff that was in them, cameras and laptops, stuff like that. My friend dispatched maintenance right away. Water leaks on a ship are kind of a big deal, and they were at the room within a minute of receiving the complaint. And they found that the passengers had left ice all around the cabin. Because of how fast the maintenance got there, it wasn't fully melted, even in the Caribbean heat, and this was with the window left open. The purser told the passengers they would not be upgraded, would not be moved, they had to sleep in wet beds that night, and they'd be charged for the cleaning costs of the room when they reached port. 2 ladies attempted to return a Dyson without a receipt. At Target, you can't do this if an item exceeds a certain price, $100 at a time. After arguing for some time, they left because we can't do anything for them. Unfortunately, the joke was on us. The ladies didn't walk in with the Dyson. We checked out that video footage. They took it from the back and tore up the package to make it look like it had been used and whatnot. You can't do this now at Target because they have some electronic lock on it. I think it's called a spider wrap or something. 2 words, U-scan. Every day there are people who go through the U-scan with all kinds of things that they, quote, accidentally put into bags by mistake or entered via the wrong code. There's a guy who tried to buy 10 pounds of beef fillet as bananas, which were 79 cents per pound. Oh Christ, the most embarrassing thing ever was when I had a crap load of limes for a recipe I was making. When you buy most produce, it gets weighed and automatically priced by pound. So, when it asked me to input the amount, my brain had a moment of stupidity and I thought, that's weird. About 2 pounds, I guess. So I typed 2, as in 2 limes. I probably had a dozen or so. The thing starts flashing red because apparently it guessed the weight was off. Why it would ask me to input the amount if it knew the weight in the first place is beyond me. I realized my idiocy immediately and turned totally red. An employee came over and I tried to explain my thought process, but my local chain hires mentally handicapped people to provide them with employment. She had no idea what I was talking about. A huge line formed behind me watching. I felt like a complete and utter D-bag. Who steals limes? Down on their luck 1930s speakeasy owners? Although, let's be honest, the idea of one of those and a self-scanning machine ever being in contact are increasingly slim. Hope the limes didn't rot under all those withering glares. I used to work as a pharmacy technician at Walmart while I was an undergrad. Patient comes in with a script for 100 oxycodone tabs. Obviously forged because it's almost never written for amounts that large. But we call the prescribing physician just to make sure. The doctor's response was, "Frick no. They had outpatient surgery. I prescribed 10 for recovery. Let's go ahead and change that to APAP or acetaminophen, 600 milligrams. In short, a patient added a 0 to his narcotic prescription. The doctor changes it to Tylenol. Police take the patient away. I suppose I should add that it looked fairly obvious that it wasn't the same pen. At least he used the same color. Working at Domino's, a woman calls in and wants her money back. She said the 4 pizzas were burnt, which is technically possible but highly unlikely. Also, she ate the pizzas anyway. We thought she was joking, but she wasn't, and the manager refunded her order. She worked at that Domino's, it was just her night off. She was let go a couple of days later. I worked at a pizzeria in college, and the manager always threw people off when they complained because it asked for the rest of the bad pizza back, ostensibly to examine it and find out what might actually be wrong with it. There was usually very, very little of it left. Really? You ate 85% of the, quote, most disgusting pizza you've ever tasted that was, quote, completely inedible. It was so awful that you could only get 4 or 5 slices down before you had to call us? My wife had the same experience working at KFC where someone tried to return a bad 20-piece bucket with 1 piece left. I worked at a restaurant a few years ago. Another server used to keep all of her tips in a guest check holder. One day she dropped the bill on a customer's table but accidentally gave them the holder with all of her money in it. Instead of being honest, the couple who had dinner took her cash and left. And they had the stones to come back about 2 months later. The owner told them that she knew what they did and asked them to leave. Never saw them again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I worked at a local pizza shop that also did wings and subs. I had one guy order 24 wings and a foot-long sub. He came up to the counter asking if he could change the wings from barbecue to hot. I changed his stuff and took his order out. 30 minutes later, he came up and tells me he'd like to speak to the manager. I went to get the manager and she talked to him for about 10 minutes. She then brings me into the back room and asks if I made half the guy's sub cold and the other half toasted. She also asked if I cooked and only made half the wings hot and the other half plain. Turns out the guy licked off all of the sauce on the wings and then took too long to eat his other half of the sub. He wanted his meal to be free because it was made at such poor quality. A lady buys a pack of cigarettes and comes back in shortly after. Tells me that the pack has 2 cigarettes missing. Yeah, sure. And the 2 cigarettes of the same brand behind your ear got there how? Another lady came in and wanted to cash in a scratch-off lottery ticket. I scanned it once and nothing pops up. I entered the number in my machine, it says the ticket is not a winner. She rips the ticket out of my hand and tries to explain that her ticket is a winner and I'm just too dumb to run the machine. I told her I'd try it one more time. I scan it and this time I print out the "sorry, not a winner" receipt. The look on her face was one I'll never forget. I hand her the ticket and receipt and told her to call that number, the Ohio lottery number, if she wants to dispute it. This other guy came in and dropped a case of glass beer bottles on the ground. No big deal, stuff like this happens, I understand. He then takes the bottles that aren't broken and tries to pocket them. The conversation went like this. I asked, sir, what are you doing? Well, it's not like you're going to sell them or anything.
Sir, look to your right. You see those bottles of beer? Where do you think they came from?
So I can't have these?
No, sir. Please put them back in the fridge.
That's my favorite story because all I had to do was clean up and he stocked the shelves for me. I used to have a lot of brick-in-a-box experiences in retail electronics. Our stuff came sealed from the factory. You're not going to be able to break the seal, remove the product, put in something of similar weight, tape it up, and return it to us without us opening up to check that the product is actually in there. We will check, and we can tell the difference between a £20 desktop computer and a £20 cinder block. I used to work at a costume shop, and apparently for about a year before I started working there, an elderly lady had been coming into the store, buying wigs, using them, and trashing them pretty much for about a week, then returning them for a store credit and getting a new one. The owner was a big softie, so for whatever dumb reason, he had been letting her get away with it. The first time she came in to do this scam, I was alone in the store and didn't know about this agreement, and flat out refused her and told her to come back when the owner was going to be in the store. That weekend, I went to my family reunion, and lo and behold, it turns out the scammer was my great aunt. After talking to a few relatives, it was made clear to her that she was no longer allowed to scam the store I worked at anymore. Honestly, color me surprised that the family didn't just tell you to knuckle under and deal with it to give themselves a bit of peace from the family matriarch. Maybe she was one of the mild family elders instead of an overbearing one. I used to work in automotive service, and one day, right at closing, this young kid comes in with a piece of crap car that's knocking and smoking and literally about to die. The oil light is on, as it obviously has no oil pressure, and he asks for an oil change. I should have listened to my instincts and sent him on his way, but we went ahead and serviced the car. After, it still wouldn't pick up oil pressure and was knocking and smoking just as bad as before. We finished up and told him his engine is basically screwed and notated that same info on his receipt, then sent him on his way. The next day, we get a call from the kid's older brother that the car is broken down and we need to come check it out. I arrive where the car is, and upon seeing which car it actually is, I know immediately that a scam is brewing. Sure enough, these idiots have removed the oil drain plug and blamed us for his blown engine. I told the big brother to take a big flying F off, that I'm not stupid and I know how bad that engine was before we ever touched it. I basically told him to go ahead and sue us and we'd see them in court, and I left. Never heard another word from them. I used to work at Papa John's and we got scammers all the time. The policy was if you complain enough, we give you free pizza. One driver, John, had been working there for 5 years and had a certain latitude for dealing with customer problems. So one day, a lady calls, complaining that we left a pizza cutter in the box. I don't know why this would be a major issue, but it was also a blatant lie. We had 3 cutters in the store. It didn't take advanced math to determine that she was full of BS. She yelled up a storm, trying to get free food, as the manager tried to play peacemaker until he'd had enough and handed the phone to John. He lets her rant for a bit before she finally finished on this, and I was so upset I might never order from you again. And he interrupted her. You promise? What? Do you promise? If you swear to God that you'll never contact this business again, I'll personally make you a pizza and drive it to your house right fricking now. What? Fine. John hung up the phone and went to make a pepperoni and mushroom pizza, smiling all the way. I sell used clothing on eBay for a living. It isn't much, but I earn more than I would with a full-time minimum wage job. Anyways, I sold a pair of dress pants to a gentleman living in Portland, Oregon. A week and a half later, he wanted to return the pants, stating they weren't to his satisfaction and that he wants me to refund him for the return shipping. My response? Sure, no problem. Just send them back and I'll refund you for the original sales price and original shipping, plus the return shipping once I receive them. He says, Great, I'm currently stationed in the Philippines and I'm sending them back right now. The shipping costs will be $26.95. I say, Unfortunately, I can't return your shipping costs from the Philippines since I originally shipped them to Portland. I'm more than happy to refund you the cost from Portland. I hope you understand. He obviously wasn't happy about this but sent them back anyway. Fast forward a month or so, when I opened the package, I took out the pants only to discover what looked like crap smeared all over the garment. I mean totally covered. I'm 100% positive I never sold them like that. I can only assume he took the return shipping to heart. I waited a week to contact the man about the pants. Our conversation was as follows. I received the pants back, thank you, smiley face. Did you see the pants? Seems like he wants me to blow up about the crappy return condition, but I reserved myself. I did, thank you. At this point, it had been more than 60 days since the transaction, making it too late for him to file a claim with eBay or PayPal. I never refunded him anything, just a thank you. Moral of the story? If someone intentionally does something to annoy you, never ever give them the satisfaction of knowing how it made you feel. I worked with a certain retail computer store. A customer came in with a shopping cart filled to the brim with UPS boxes that were sent from the online store of the company I work for. All in all, it's about 15 grand worth of servers and high-end computers. He wants me to return them to him for cash on the spot. Aside from the fact that the servers are both custom and not even available in retail stores, there is no way I could hand this guy 15 grand in cash and just let him walk off. I explain all of this. He needs to return them to the online store he bought them from. I don't even carry these products. And he loses his mind, screaming, like seriously screaming about what a thief I was and how much money he's wasted on my company and how he'll have my head. Me and the manager tried to calm him down, but he was freaking out. So he called security. He retreated to just beyond the border of the store and stood 10 yards away, still screaming about what a terrible person I am, personally. Security comes and escorts him away. He's banned from the store. His photo goes on the wall, the name is taken down, all of that. 1 week later, and I am crapping you the F not, the guy comes back in, with a shaved head, wearing huge aviators, quietly approaches me and requests the exact same thing. He looked like the guy from Taxi Driver at this point, so I'm marginally scared he's about to stab me or something. I go, "Man, we told you can't come around here anymore. I can't help you with this." He says to me, "Oh, that was my twin. He causes lots of problems for me like this. I'm sure we can move past it." I'm like, stunned. I go to get my manager and he repeats his story again. We're pretty much stunned, so all I can say is, "We just can't help you with this. I'm sorry, you have to leave." He loses it a second time, calling me a thief, threatening to come and find me later, and this time the real cops come and escort him away again. That crazy mother effer. In short, crazy D-bag shaved his head to trick me into believing he was his problem-causing twin and to get me to give him 15k in exchange for UPS boxes of product. I love the people who blatantly try to get away with crimes and have the nerve to verbally attack the people who refuse to deal with them. Surely at that point you know to cut your losses and try something else. Drawing attention to yourself is only going to get you in trouble. Years ago, I worked for a Goodwill thrift store. I was on the closing shift on register and rung up a 30-something-year-old woman. One of the items she was buying was footy pajamas. She went on and on about how warm and comfy they looked and she couldn't wait to put them on and snuggle up with a cup of cocoa. The next morning, I'm the opening cashier. Here comes the same woman from the night before to return her entire purchase because nothing had fit. However, the items she was returning weren't the ones she bought. She was furious and denied that she had simply retagged other clothes for the return and had no idea what I was talking about. We had her previous purchase on tape as well. The manager ended up taking 3 items back that could have maybe been what she bought. Same colors. She was banned not long after that as she pulled the scam at many locations. Another Goodwill trick was to make purchases and get a card stamped. 1 stamp for every $20 spent or the like, and then return the items without presenting the card. Once a card was filled, it was worth $10 of store credit. They have since discontinued that stupid promotion. What is a dumb stereotype about your country that is 100% false? Romania. Many people believe we have vampires, but in my 700 years of living here, I haven't seen one. I asked my mates back in the castle, and they also haven't seen any, and they've been around for many more centuries than I. That Welsh people do the deed with sheep. Listen, the temptation's there, but the static shock wouldn't be worth it. That Finland doesn't exist. I saw some devs stream a strategy game that dynamically generated country names as they formed or were conquered. The Finnish viewers were not happy that Finland became Swedish Russia. No, Italians aren't all short, black-haired fat mobsters that wear wine-stained tank tops and cupolas. We are loud though, and yes, we gesture a lot. Iceland was not named as a part of some conspiracy to keep people away from a good thing. The name comes from the fact that early settlers arrived during summer and then suffered horrible losses of livestock and people once the winter hit, and icebergs were seen filling the fjords. It was more of a warning than anything that this place sucked. Greenland, on the other hand, was probably named as such to make it sound more hospitable. Parts of Greenland were actually fairly green when it was named in 1000 AD, at least in the southwest corner where Eric the Red landed, thanks to the Gulf Stream taking a slightly different route back then. Kenyans are all long-distance runners. They live in huts, speak no English, and have pet wild animals. Ugh, so here goes. The long-distance guys are mainly from one of the communities or tribes called the Kalenjin, that's about 15% of the population. Next, Kenya is still a developing nation with a lot of poverty, but there's also a lot of modern architecture. The country is rated 18 out of 100 on the English Proficiency Index. And lastly, you can apply for a social and rarely granted permit for your bobcat named Babu, but keeping wildlife is not at all common. And the Kenya Wildlife Services will conduct regular visits to ensure Babu isn't being kept in Meowschwitz-like conditions. There was a popular documentary in the US about Kenyan runners, and they basically lied. They said that Kenyans ran long distances to schools, whilst completely failing to mention that most Kenyans take the school bus, and the kids they were featuring were running to school as training, not because they had to. Yeah, I feel like this comment is the condensed experience of going to a Trevor Noah stand-up comedy gig, and it's a message that still needs spreading in 2025. There are a lot of people all over the world who have very stilted views towards the entire continent of Africa. Also, it should be noted that the narrator will be doing accents for only a few of these, as doing bad comedy voices for every country of the world is probably a great way to make more enemies than I already have. People generally assume that when you're from Belgium, you're French-speaking. While a big part of the country is Francophone, the majority population is Flemish or Dutch-speaking. I blame this on 3 factors mostly. People mainly visiting Brussels, which is bilingual but has a Francophone majority, Americans mostly having been stationed in the French-speaking part in World War II, and Hercule Poirot. Greece is not only beaches and islands, we also have beautiful places for the winter, many mountains and mainland attractions. Every corner has something interesting. That it's always hot in Australia. It's not. It goes from hot to cold. There's no other temperature except for a few days of the year. That crumpets and tea make you posh. I can get 9 crumpets for £1 from my local Asda. It's far from posh. The myth is that everyone here is always drunk on vodka and people ride bears, play on balalaikas and dance the kazachok, and that we're either drunk or mad. While there is problem with alcoholism, a lot of people don't drink, especially not vodka. Funnily enough, bears do appear, but very rarely. And the people that ride bears have them as pets? No, they're considered unusual by other Russians. Balalaika is dead, I know one person that plays it, and that's it. We dance the kazachok, only ironically at this point. We're not always mad, we're just people, with emotions. But ushankas are great and warm, so people do wear them. Not all of them, though, and also we're not all super people. All of our country is just green herb and red light districts. Yes, we have these things, but the Netherlands has lots of culture. That Mexico is a desert. The Yucatan is fully rainforest. It's where jaguars come from. Never mind the huge swaths of pine forests in the middle of the country too, particularly around Mexico City. A lot of people confuse different European countries. For Switzerland, you're often Swedish. I'd imagine it's similar for Belgium and Bulgarians and Slovakia and Slovenians. I'm from Serbia, and people used to try and convince me it's a part of Russia. That's Siberia. That everyone in Vietnam still harbors resentment against Americans, or the French, or the Japanese, or you get the point. I've lived in Saigon my whole life, and I've never actually met anyone here who holds such grudges. It's pretty inspiring, actually. Could probably learn a lot from that. That the Irish are the biggest drunks in the world is completely false and mean, as we're only the second biggest drinkers in the world, but we hope to get the first place next year. In terms of pure ethanol from all sources consumed per capita, Moldova wins with 15.2 litres per capita per year. That Inuit still live in igloos. The Prime Minister's igloo has been closed for renovations since 2019. That all Germans have some secret knowledge of the Second World War that they'd love to share. I always found that interesting when I lived in London. Especially English people over 40 would ask me for some first-hand experiences from the war. Keep in mind that not even my parents were born at that time. The facts we know are the same ones you do from your history classes and stuff. That we say shrimp on the Barbie. It was an ad campaign to appeal to Americans. It was the most successful tourism campaign still to this day, but literally no one in Australia says that. As an authentic Aussie, let me tell you a story about Foster's as well. A friend of mine owned me a slab of beer, and he arrived at my house with a slab of Foster's.
My other mates and I looked around at each other and said, "Why did you buy that?" He explains that maybe we should try something different. We all seem a little sus about it when my mate suddenly says he'll return it for something else. Days later, he goes back to the bottle shop and asks the cashier if he can exchange the Foster's slab for a different beer. He also says he lost the receipt for the Foster's, but the cashier replies, No, that's alright. I remember you. You're the guy who bought the Foster's slab." That everyone drinks maple syrup, and there are moose everywhere saying, "Sorry," all the time. That leprechauns are real, and we're a nation of alcoholics. Alright, that last one might actually be true. I swear to God, if someone says Ireland is part of the UK though, one more time. That everyone plays soccer and knows how to dance samba, that there are monkeys in the streets, and that the capital is Rio de Janeiro. That sheep roam the highways here in New Zealand. To be fair, I've had to stop for sheep on the highway just out of Wanganui. Same. That Brazil is a huge tropical jungle in which people speak Spanish. Brazil actually has several major cities and different environments. Sao Paulo, for instance, is a huge sprawling metropolis with about as many inhabitants as New York and LA combined. In many southern areas of the country, it actually snows on occasion, and we're a Portuguese colony, so we speak Portuguese. Most people don't realize how fricking massive Brazil is. Its northernmost point is closer to Canada than its southernmost point. Yes, the narrator was embarrassingly old when he learned that Brazilians spoke Portuguese rather than Spanish, and he's constantly surprised when he learns how massive a lot of the South American countries are. It's an ongoing learning journey. Dracula is often depicted as living in Transylvania, and while he was imprisoned there for a while, he was actually the ruler of Wallachia, another historic Romanian province that neighbors Transylvania to the south. As for the rumor that we're vampires, I neither confirm nor deny this statement. Thank you for reading, mortals. I mean, friends. People think British people are either stiff upper lip public schoolboys or cockney bricklayers and football hooligans. There's a whole world of people in between. Some of us don't even like football. One of my friends doesn't even drink tea. Not sure why she's my friend, to be honest. That the Germans don't have humor and we live to work. Also, that our trains are always on time. As someone who often relies on the Deutschbahn to get around, that seems like a cruel joke. French here. That we don't shower. We do, guys, we're not in the 1700s anymore. Also that French women don't shave. I mean, there's some that don't, but this has more to do with their personal choices and a general trend of having more and more women that don't shave around the world than their inherent Frenchness. Oh, and that we're unfaithful too. I see that stereotype all the time on the internet. I don't think we're more unfaithful than our European neighbors or even Americans. We do eat frogs and snails, though. Oh, so much, according to popular opinion, I should be a green herb-smoking, clog-wearing tulip farmer living in a windmill. Can you guess where I'm from yet? Not exactly myth, but decent amounts of people still think that Czechoslovakia exists. We split apart in 1993. We're the Czech Republic, not Czechoslovakia anymore. To make it clear, the Czech Republic, shortcut Czechia, and Slovakia are two different countries. And FYI, Slovakia and Slovenia are also two different countries. They're not even neighboring countries. I've never seen a mime in Paris. To all the people who say they've seen a mime in Montmartre, Champs-de-Mars, or Champs-Élysées, that one time they were in Paris, yes. If you go to the most touristy place in the city, obviously you'll see some of them trying to rip off tourists. What I meant is that when you actually live there, they aren't a normal thing to come across. Well, did you check behind the invisible wall? That we're all sad, there's no sun, and there's always snow. Sincerely, any of the Nordic countries. Australian here, glad you asked. Everyone thinks it's dangerous as F, that spiders, drop bears, snakes, feral cats, and dogs will rip your freaking heart out every time you step out the door. The truth is that unless you act like a half-wit, poke said snake or spider with your finger, then you'll be fine. Battle echidna, dervish spiders, saltwater crocodiles, and drop bears just don't live in suburbia. You need to go into the bush to even see a lizard, which usually promptly F's off the moment a stone-footed Oompa Loompa waddles past them. I mean, sure, it's not as dangerous as people believe unless you go looking for the dangerous crap. However, I've seen plenty of Australians talking about finding huntsman spiders inside their houses, and that's enough to stay the F away from me. Another myth is that we lost the Emu War. We didn't just lose, we got frickin' demolished. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel.
The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. That we roam around with wild animals like lions and rhinos, have no cities and thus live in huts, and that we're all poor and malnourished. Don't forget that Africa, the most ethnically and culturally diverse continent, is supposedly one big homogeneous country. I had to tell my cousins in the UK that no, unfortunately we don't ride kangaroos to school and work every day in Australia. Pfft, nobody thinks that Australians work every day. That we're all ginger alcoholics who hate the English and run around the hills in our skirts screaming, "Freedom!" When I started dating my now wife, who's from Oklahoma, she informed me that her friends and family were convinced that Canadians didn't have ice or toilet paper. They wanted her to ask me about it because apparently they were confused by that. I'd never laughed so hard. I mean, it's Canada. We're ice 70% of the year, basically. Nigeria. That everyone here is into scamming people. Huh. As a Nigerian, I mean, there is a prevalence of internet scams compared to most other countries. That Indians don't speak English. I was once asked how I'm so good at English, like we're literally the second largest English-speaking country. I know, right? I'm far more fluent in English than my first language, and people are very surprised when I tell them I'm from India. That the only thing we care about is rugby, and we all live in hobbit holes. I, for one, am absolutely terrified of rugby, but I'm Kiwi as, bro. That we are all rude if you don't speak French, we don't shower or shave, and we all like wine, cheese, and baguettes, and France can be summarized as Paris. Genuine conversation I had in a bar with a Frenchman in Cantal. Do you know who we French hate the most? Oh, here we go. It's us English, right? No. Germans? No. Americans? No. I give up. Parisians. To somewhat counter your point, we were drinking wine in a village next to a shop that only made baguettes. You know what, that last point does make me feel like I have more in common with the French, because literally every country in the world seems to hate the denizens of the capital if they don't live there. They're just like us, guys. Woo, Singaporean here. First, no, we're not part of China. We're not even in the same region. Yes, the population is 60% ethnically Chinese, but that doesn't make us a part of China any more than it makes the USA part of Britain. As a matter of fact, there's a problem of racism against mainland Chinese, since locals tend not to see them as true Singaporeans. This is exacerbated by the fact that lots of mainland Chinese are pretty pro-China, human rights violations and all, while the local Chinese don't like China and the CCP very much. We're closer culturally to Taiwan. Second, it's not illegal to be undressed inside your own home. You can be stalkers while bathing or doing the deed if you like. You just can't use "I am in my own home" as a defense against streaking or showing everyone your naughty bits. 90% of the population live in government apartments, and we don't need pervs flashing people through their windows. Incidentally, this is a law come about because people were doing that. Singapore used to have a big flasher problem back in the 80s. Times were just weird. 3. It's not illegal to chew gum, only to import or sell it or bring it onto the trains. This is because idiots used to literally gum up the train doors and make everyone late for work. The government put up with it for a few months and then said, screw it, no more gum for anyone. This is why we can't have nice things. And finally, the government doesn't fine people for every little offense anymore. They used to, but enforcement has become lenient in the last 2 decades. Sadly, this means that there's now a ton of litter where the streets used to be pristine. Still, you might not want to litter or spit right in front of a cop. That Africa is a country and that it's comprised of only one ethnicity. That it's socially acceptable to call people the C word. You'll get away with it with your mates, but you'll probably get your head stomped if you call the wrong person that in public. Also, it's possible to be arrested for using it in public in certain circumstances. Oh, and I hate that people think we all knew Steve Irwin. Like, sure thing, we've all shared many a bush-chuck tinnies with old mate Steve-O down the local. Not all of us say, eh? Wait, I'm confused. Are you Canadian or Kiwi? Somehow people think that Brazilians speak Spanish and only like soccer and carnaval. The soccer and carnaval thing is mostly true, but Spanish? Really? Most people can't tell Portuguese and Spanish apart, so there's that. Pair that up with only having a vague idea of what European country invaded what plot of land back in the day, and you've got a reason for the confusion. That we're all tech scammers and like eating cow dung. If your guess was India, congratulations, you've been influenced by the stereotype. That the Netherlands is called Holland, but Holland is only a piece of the Netherlands. Also, that apparently we're the inventor of the tulip, that was Turkey. We aren't all overweight people wearing old Navy American flag t-shirts and khaki shorts. Only like 60% of us. That and all Americans own firearms. The majority of Americans don't even live in an armed household. There are more than 2 accents in the UK. It's not just Cockney and the Queen's English. That everyone in Japan works crazy hours and never has enough time or energy for things they want to do. People on average work longer hours than mainland Europe, sure, but they work less hours than the US, so that's BS. In France, everyone believes the opposite, that we do the bare minimum and are on vacation all the time. Yep, that's not true. My dad's a university professor and he works a lot, while my mum works in tech and it seems to be even worse there. That Sweden is a socialist paradise. It's neither socialist nor a paradise, though it is a nice country to live in, except for the weather. That we ride camels to work in Turkey. Short answer, we don't. That in Brazil you can get robbed at gunpoint virtually everywhere you go oh wait, that's true. That Germans all wear lederhosen, except on the Oktoberfest or the Wazen, it's a rare sight. That we're hungry. Alright, it looks like I should have specified that I am talking about the country of Hungary. That we here in Hong Kong have basic human rights. So many people think that the drop bear isn't real. It is. You've got to be real careful because they're real sneaky and they'll screw you up. There is no freaking cream in carbonara. Regardless of the borderline relevance and hilarious Italian culinary outrage, this is true, and the actual real recipe, using tempered eggs, is way tastier and cheaper anyway. Try it out, folks. The whole world seems to think that Germany is a place run by very smart, efficient, and hardworking people. The truth is that there are little to no relevant innovations coming from here. We've missed the jump into the new era because of stubborn and conservative structures and ideas. The once high-quality label "Made in Germany" isn't worth a damn anymore. It might still be better than some cheap crap from other countries, but it is still built to break. That all Australians drink Foster's beer. On the contrary, it's one of the least sold beers here, and it tastes horrible. That we all have the same accent or sound the same way when we speak. People watch a lot of British TV and assume we all speak in RP or like Londoners, when there's a pretty broad range of accents here in the UK. Like Northern or Midlands accents are wildly different to the ones in the South, and don't even get me started on Welsh, Scottish or Irish accents. That we're the freest country in the world. With a caveat, only people within the US actually believe that. Those on the outside, not so much. That all Alaskans live in igloos and ride polar bears. The image most people outside of Europe have of Austria. Did you really think that we're always wearing lederhosen and drindel? That we're all living in the Alps and that we yodel from one mountain hill to another to stay in touch with our neighbors? Actually, that would be pretty great, to be honest. I'm English, but I still haven't met the Queen, and I don't like tea. Many people still believe chewing gum is banned in Singapore, and if you're caught with it, you'd get caned. The reality is that in the 1990s it used to be completely banned, but today only selling it is illegal. Dental chewing gum is also allowed in Singapore. American here. Not all Americans are loud, obnoxious, stupid, gun-toting rednecks. There are many smart, polite Americans. We just get outshined by the idiots. Oh, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of idiots, but we're not all idiots. That Greeks are lazy and don't work. Say that to me while I'm working my usual 12-hour day, can't see my friends because they do the same, and my father is dying because he overworked himself and has very serious health problems because of it. Bad teeth in the UK, when in reality, up to the age of 18, we have free dental care. Brazil is a horrible place with criminality rates at 63,917%, and we live in a forest. That it's easy to start your own business and grow it until you achieve the American dream. By the 5th year of being open, 50% of them fail, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I live in Norway. There's supposed to be a misconception that everyone native to Norway is tall and blonde. My ancestors have lived here for ages, and 90% of my family look like dark-haired hobbits. I've also heard that many people think that the Norwegian language can be traced directly back to the Norse language. There are bound to be relations between them, but it's mostly a mix between Danish and German. And during the last 30 years, more and more English has found its way into it. The Northern Lights are a very rare sight in most parts of the country. I live relatively far south and have seen them here once, but they usually only appear in the north during winter. Our country isn't very big, but it is quite long. The furthest northmost point of the country is over 1,900 kilometers or 1,200 miles away from my house. If I were to travel the same distance southwards, I'd reach Trento in northern Italy. I think that myth about Polish people being thieves and alcoholics is still commonly believed. Of course we drink a lot, but not every single one is an alcoholic. And that myth about us being thieves is not correct. I lived in Poland my whole life, I'm 30, and I've never been robbed or anything like that. I never lock my car, and I park on the street. Poland is really nice, and when this freaking pandemic ends, I highly recommend that everyone should consider visiting us. That Canadians are inherently nice and tolerant. We are not. So many rude, ignorant jerks. When did you get to watch a dumb criminal set themselves up for failure? Someone stole my credit card and bought an iPad, but had it shipped to my house. I'm guessing they accidentally went with the default ship to billing address option. The kicker is they actually called me, pretending to be a Best Buy employee, and said they'd shipped a package in error and I should leave it outside for UPS to pick up. Luckily, I noticed the charge on my credit card and was able to return the iPad for a full refund. I gave the phone number to the cops. A friend of mine had his backpack with his $1,400 engineering laptop in it stolen while at campus food court. I had a weird gut feeling it would turn up on Craigslist or somewhere similar. Every day for a week I checked Craigslist. Exactly 1 week later, I found that laptop. This extremely stupid criminal took a picture of the laptop screen with my friend's login name. Yeah, very dumb criminal. So I contacted the seller immediately via email and he responded within 20 minutes. I said I'd like to buy the laptop from him. We agreed to meet at a nearby parking lot later that day. Next, we called the cops. They agreed to set up a sting on the thief. One of the officers pretended to be the buyer and approached the thief. The officer acted as if he was examining the laptop, but was actually looking for the serial number. Boom, it had a matching number and they arrested that idiot. A week ago, 4 months later, the guy was proven guilty and, to my knowledge, was spending a year in prison. Plus, my buddy finally got his laptop back. My parents were driving home and saw their second car coming the other way. They turned around, followed it, and stole it back with their spare keys. And yes, they obviously reported the matter to the police. The stupid girl found my debit card after I'd dropped it on campus. Took it to Wilson's Leather and bought her boyfriend a leather jacket. When my card didn't have enough on it to pay the whole cost of the jacket, she used her own debit card to finish paying it off. All on video. We left our garage open a few years ago at night by accident. Apparently someone had been snooping around in there because everything was out of place in the morning, except for a solid gold bracelet lying on the ground outside the garage door. What did they steal? My fricking Razor scooter, man. My card was stolen once. The person ordered about $75 worth of pizza and had it delivered to their house. I visited the pizza place, said I needed a receipt for the pizza so my company would pay me back, and they gave me a receipt showing the address they delivered it to. Turned it into the police in town and they were on the news 2 days later. Seems like a bit of a misjudgment to get it delivered rather than just coming and picking it up in the store. I mean, you might have ended up in the CCTV, but what are the odds of anyone being able to identify you with that? When I worked at Guitar Center, a couple came into the store. The guy left and the girl stayed, checking out the guitars. A sales guy saw her holding 2 higher-end Gibson Les Pauls down by the low-end side of the wall by the BC Riches. He asked if he could help, and she asked a question about the guitars. He took one from her and went to check something on it, and once he was about 20 yards away, she bolted. She sprinted down the hallway to the warehouse, past the bathrooms, and busted out the emergency exit door that lets out behind the store. 2 guys took chase and made it out in time to see a car squealing around the corner of the building. We had really got nothing to go on. I was mad because having a $3,500 guitar stolen cuts into my bonus, and it just overall sucks to have your crew bummed about the theft. Cut to 1 week later, I'm running my morning meeting and I'm told I have an important phone call. I take the call and my friend is telling me I have to check my email. I do, and there's a link from him to a Craigslist ad. The mother effer posted a photo of himself holding the guitar. I know that it's ours, I just know it. He describes it inaccurately and is asking for $1,000. Gives a BS reason for it not having a case. We need that serial number. We need that freaking number. Another manager calls him pretending to be a collector. He casually asks for the serial number, saying he's only looking for guitars from a certain year. He calls it a date code, but I don't think the guy is buying it. He tells him he'll call him back with the number, but then never does. So we're getting antsy. We call the cops, we form a plan. Another one of our guys calls and tells this dude he just has to have this guitar. He'll come meet him with cash. The guy agrees. They meet at a gas station. Dude walks up with this gorgeous $3,500 Les Paul in a $35 gig bag. They talk crap for a bit and my guy asks to see the guitar. He looks it over and checks the serial. It's ours. Yeah, man, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Great guitar. And then he waves across the street to the cop car that was waiting around the corner. The guy is like a deer in the headlights. They arrest him and even let us leave with the guitar. Back at the store, my friend's phone rings. It's the guy's number. He answers and a woman's voice says, "Were you meeting my boyfriend about a guitar?" My friend says, "Yep, sure did." "Oh, he's not back yet. Are you still with him?" "Nope, I'm already home." "Oh, weird. Okay. Well, did you get the guitar?" "I sure did. I'm holding it right now. Thanks." "Oh, great. Thanks. Have a good day." 1 hour later, she calls back. Didn't even bother to answer. She left a very nasty voicemail with a lot of swearing. Priceless. I hear he threw her under the bus in court, and they were both in hot crap over the whole thing. Jeez, the girl felt justified enough about her actions to leave an angry voicemail? What the hell could she possibly say? I've got one from this past weekend, actually. I volunteer cleaning up at a local park. It's called a park, but it has no facilities and no employees. It's really more of a forest, and it doesn't get much official attention. Anyway, almost every day I walk through, pick up trash, and ensure it's properly disposed of. It's a beautiful park, and I like to keep it that way. So Sunday afternoon, I found that someone had dumped a huge amount of construction debris in the park along one of the access roads. As I piled it up neatly, I found a receipt with the guy's name, address, and phone number, along with a description of his vehicle, including the make, model, mileage, and VIN. So I called the state park police and asked to speak with an officer. I showed him the dumped trash, showed him the receipt I found, and made a formal complaint. He gave me the usual, "We'll let you know if we need anything else from you." The officer then called me last night to thank me for finding the receipt. He said they went and paid the guy a visit, found that vehicle in the driveway, and he answered the door. "Are you John Doe?" He said, "Yeah, that's me." And the officer said he insisted he knew nothing about illegal dumping, no surprises there, and when it seemed like the interrogation was going nowhere, he pulled out the receipt and the guy said, "That's not my name." He had already said it was him. The officer told me that's when he said, "Okay, sir, if you're not going to properly identify yourself, you're under arrest for obstructing a government official, a Class A misdemeanor, and we'll fingerprint you at the station and find out who you really are." Suddenly, the guy's story changed. He was the guy on the receipt, that was his truck, and he dumped the trash in the park. The officer even said that the guy said, "I never thought I'd get caught," and he wouldn't have either if it wasn't for us meddling kids. In short, guy dumps construction debris in a park, leaves receipt with name, address, phone number, make and model and mileage of vehicle, and VIN. The guy lies about it when questioned by the cops, and comes clean after confronted with the receipt. I've had this same thing happen about 8 years ago. The idiots used my debit card info to purchase a digital camera and computer parts, about $800 total, from Newegg, and then had them shipped to my address. Called up Wells Fargo as soon as I noticed the charge, and they handled it fairly quickly. 3 days later, I was refunded the purchase and returned the merchandise to Newegg as soon as it arrived. I considered myself pretty lucky that the miscreants used incredibly poor thievery technique. My soccer team was playing a game at a local park. During the game, a sketchy-looking guy runs through to the pitch we're playing on holding several cell phones. We soon realize that said valuables belong to us and we begin chasing him. He probably thought that he's made a profit, stealing cell phones worth hundreds, until he looks back and sees 30 people chasing him down. When we caught him, we took our valuables back and proceeded to beat the crap out of him. The thing is, our changing rooms are roughly 200 yards from the field, so why run directly past the people you've just robbed when you could so easily sneak away? Someone stole my wife's debit card and used it for online gambling websites in Europe, and ended up winning. The winning automatically went right back into her account. Sadly, she couldn't keep it since she had already disputed the charges with the bank and frozen the account. Damn it. I mean, you'd almost be kicking yourself for doing the smart thing and freezing your account, wouldn't you? That said, you potentially recouped a lot of money for other stuff they'd spent it on, so it's probably just best to take the low-level win. The first time my dad was on jury service, the case involved a criminal who'd tried to rob a jeweler's shop. This was probably in the UK in the early 50s, when police response was slower and shops weren't as well protected as they are now. The shop had a burglar alarm, but the thief figured that he could just smash the front window, grab anything he could reach, and be gone long before the police showed up. Unfortunately, he didn't do his research properly. The shop was actually on the ground floor of an apartment block that was used to provide accommodation for young police officers. About a minute after the alarm went off, he found himself surrounded by 20 cops, and about 15 minutes after that, he was in a cell. In short, clueless burglar knocks over a shop next to police apartments, and jail time ensues. A friend of mine was mugged by some teenagers. He wore a fluffy jacket, so when the muggers frisked him, they didn't find his mobile phone, but got his cash. As they were leaving, he heard them say that they were taking a taxi to a specific store. As soon as they left, it was easy for him to call the police, who made a broadcast to all taxi drivers. After that, it was easy for the police to arrest the muggers. I live in a third world country, and my parents got a phone call from someone who first put a crying girl on the line and claimed they'd kidnapped me. I was with them at the time, so they knew it was fake. The conversation went like this. "Oh, that's weird. I don't have a daughter." "Oh, you don't? So do you have a son?" "Nope." "Oh, well, how about a younger sister?" And my dad hung up. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. That happened to my mother. Somehow, someone got a hold of her credit card number and proceeded to buy things. Not even things that were remotely close to what she likes. I think they brought an attachment to a muffler, a prepaid cell phone, and some CDs, all shipped to my mother. I don't think they were very good at crime. My friend's roommate also lifted my debit card to buy lunch and dinner on a couple of occasions. He works in an entirely different part of the state than my friend. My friend confronted him about it, and he said, "No, that wasn't me." My friend just asked him again, and he admitted it. Still waiting on getting paid back, though. In high school, a girl's BlackBerry got stolen while she was at track practice. It was a huge scandal, as the only people with access to her stuff were people on the track team. The person who stole her phone tried to set up his email on the phone, which sent an email to her saying, "Are you sure you want to change your email to theguy'sname@gmail.com? It ended up being a team captain who had given the speech to the team asking for the phone to be returned. NBA player Reggie Harding washed out of the league by age 25. He returned to his old neighborhood in Detroit without any marketable skills. One day, he walked into a neighborhood liquor store with a nylon mask over his head, brandishing a weapon and demanding money. The clerk took one look at the 7-footer and reportedly said, "I know that's you, Reggie," to which Harding replied, "It ain't me, man." When I was 16 years old, some former friends broke into my basement. Among a couple of other random things, they stole my radio, which was a giant boombox, and my bike. They also stole a couple of sports collectibles that belonged to my stepfather. My stepfather was not the kind of man you wanted to get mad. While he was never a violent person, he had no problems with resorting to violence if need be. His sons, though, had hair-trigger tempers. It didn't take too much for them to want to beat the crap out of someone. I was angry, my stepfather was about to lose his crap, he calls up his sons who head over to the house. As they're about to pull in, they hear music. The kids who broke into my house were in the schoolyard, 3 houses down from where I live, listening to my radio, and one is sitting on my bike. Beatings were issued. Some buddies of mine once broke into an ice cream truck and got busted just a few blocks away eating said ice cream. I had my iPod Touch stolen. The guy didn't seem clever when he started talking with his girlfriend on my Facebook. Figured who she was, talked with her, got her to talk with him, he lived far away apparently, and boom. This kid that was in my class in high school years back ran an operation on eBay selling those underbody neon light kits. You know, the bullcrap that makes you look all fast and furious. Anyway, he makes a small fortune selling that stuff. The only problem was that when the customer received their product, it was just a picture of the neon car kit. This kid had apparently worded his description to confuse people into thinking they were buying the real thing, but in reality they were spending $200 on a piece of paper. A bunch of really angry people from around the country called our local police and he ended up getting arrested. I can't remember the charge, but he had tens of thousands of dollars to pay back plus fines. The entire town shamed him, made fun of him for crying when the police interviewed him and everything. He was all over the news for a bit. You know, it's a pretty small town if this was the news event of the century there. Also, the narrator thought about doing something like this to try and scam the scalpers who were taking advantage of people when the PS4 came out, and people were buying them out and selling them at inflated prices on eBay to desperate parents at Christmas. My friend informed me that I could still get in a lot of trouble no matter how explicit my ads for pictures of PS4s were, even if I made sure I was only selling to scalpers. So it just goes to show you can't even get away with doing this kind of thing to rob from the bad guys. This is my story of how Visa paid me for a diamond ring. One day I went to check my credit card bill and noticed there were two really big charges, one at a random jewelry store in Seattle and one at jcpenney.com. This was back in 2003 before they'd call you instantly. I called them and they said they'd take care of it. The charges were removed immediately, and I thought I was done with the whole thing. My wife's family lives out of the country and we go to visit them every year for Christmas. Everyone just buys stuff and ships it to us in the months before, so we get random packages all the time. A day or two later, my wife, then girlfriend, calls me at school and says, did you order a 3-diamond engagement ring? Now, she knows it's not for her because she hates diamonds. We quickly figure out this must be the $2,000 charge on my credit card bill. It seems they had the item shipped overnight, no idea why they sent it to my address. Maybe they were hoping to pick it up in the mail. It's almost time to fly out of the country, so we stash it in my desk and figure we'll deal with it when we get back. 3 weeks later, when everything's settled down, I call JCPenney and explain the situation. I'm very clear. I have the ring, I didn't pay a dime for it, and I'd be happy to get it back to them if they send me a shipping box. They offer to send me a prepaid thing so I can return it. A couple of days later, it arrives, but it's only a shipping label, and I don't have the original box. I don't want to be responsible for the item getting damaged in shipping, so I call JCPenney and explain the whole thing again. They say I should just bring the label and the ring to the local JCPenney and they'll take care of it. So, we hop in the car and go to the local store. Here's the flow of events. The service desk won't help us. Anything jewelry must be handled by that department. The jewelry department looks up the order and finds that it's a special order, and only the special order department can do anything about it. And there just happens to be a special order counter downstairs. So we end up at the special order counter and I explain the whole thing to the guy behind the desk. He gets his manager and I explain it again. I'm very clear that this is not my ring and I have not paid for it. The guy at the register, with his manager standing behind him, tells me that the only way he can ship the ring back is as a return, and he has to put the full amount back on the original card. His books need to match the ins and outs, so that's his only option. I ask if they're going to be mad that they paid me for the ring, and he says, if they come after anyone, it's going to be me. Okay then, I say as I hand him my credit card, and he puts $2,000 on it. I figure in a week or two, JCPenney will call and get their money back. The call never comes. Not in 3 weeks or 3 months. A year later, the credit card company gets tired of me having such a large positive balance and mails me a check for $2,000. In short, Crook buys a ring with my card, and JCPenney pays me $2,000. My dad is an ex-cop. He still knows and hangs out with most cops in town. After he retired, he bought a very large Ford pickup truck. Sorry, I don't know anything about the model. And he had a custom paint job done to it. Everybody knew this truck. Of course, some idiot steals it. Bad enough that he stole a truck with a custom paint job which is going to stick out like a sore thumb no matter where it goes, but this moron decides to take it joyriding around town. Of course, once the cops get wind of this, they're all over it like flies on poop. Word spreads quickly. If anyone sees JJ's truck, it was stolen. Get them. It's not like they had to look very hard. There were eagles painted on the back windows, each door, and the hood. It's not like the truck was going to blend in with the rest of traffic, especially considering the owner is well known. The guy might as well have had a neon sign saying "Please arrest me" floating over his head. He was busted the minute he drove by a cop, which didn't take very long. A guy I know stole my bike once. 2 weeks later, however, he forgot who he stole it from and bragged to me and several other people about how he stole it. So I stole it back. I saw a guy get caught for stealing a bunch of Nutter Butters once. What do you mean by a bunch? Was he stealing multiple packages of Nutter Butters, or did he just grab a handful of loose Nutter Butters and run? I'm gonna go buy some Nutter Butters now. Nice work, Nutter Butter PR rep. Amex is a little overzealous in their anti-fraud practices. I just purchased $1,200 of parts for my home computer rig from Newegg.com. I got a call about 30 minutes later from Amex asking if it was me. I said, yes, what kind of thief would send computer parts to the billing address? His response was, you'd be surprised. And some of these other answers are making me realize they were far from exaggerating. Someone got a credit card in my name, made purchases, but paid the balance on time. Did you thank him for the good credit rating? In principle, no, but in practicality, I probably should have. I remember reading about someone on here finding that someone stole their identity and opened up several cards in their name when he was very young. They always paid on time and made his credit score great. I wish I could remember what the end result was, if they were already paid off, if he had to close it and pay the remaining balance himself or things like that. I love this. Were people just unable to get one in their own name? Had they learned from their previous terrible credit score and resolved to do better? So many questions about what's going on here. I used to live in a student rental. Me, a friend, and a third guy whom neither of us knew. My friend and I went to Newcastle for a weekend on a visit, and when we returned, both my Xbox 360 and his PS3 were missing. We quizzed guy number 3 about it, and he claimed that he'd gone out one night and the door was open when he came back. He said he hadn't contacted us as his phone was broken. That turned out to be a total lie. So naturally, we contacted the police, and the officer who came round inspected the door and mentioned that there was no sign of forced entry anywhere in the house. A couple of days later, flatmate number 3 left his door open while he went out. Neither of us totally believed his story, so we decided to poke our heads into the room to see if there was anything untoward. And what do we find? Yep, both consoles plugged into his TV. We left the room and didn't mention it to him when he came back. Instead, my friend went outside and contacted the police to inform them that we'd found the perpetrator. About an hour later, he was being led out the door in handcuffs. 2 hours later, his entire room was emptied out and in a pile of black sacks in the hallway. We work damn fast when we want to. His father came by the next day to collect the stuff and to verbally attack us for grassing, and we never heard from him again. To this day, we still laugh about the sheer audacity of stealing from someone you live with and keeping the stolen items roughly 20 feet away. When did you see the opening of a Pandora's box of gross or crazy stuff at a hotel? I wasn't working and was just a guest, but I wish I'd asked the staff for the backstory. I was checking into my hotel in LA and was given my keycard. Headed to the room, opened the door, and there was just this undressed buff dude standing next to the bed, staring at me. He says nothing. I apologize and quickly leave, assuming somehow I'd gotten the wrong room. I go back to the front desk and say, I'm sorry, but I think you gave me the wrong room. There's a buck man already in there. The worker at the front desk says, crap, not again. He pulls out his walkie-talkie and says, security, he's back again. They assigned me to a different room and I was on my way. I work overnights in a relatively small hotel and at least 6 or 7 days a week. I hear people doing the deed loudly as heck in their rooms. Half the rooms have a balcony that overlooks the lobby, and those doors are not soundproof at all. We had a man sleepwalk out of his room to the lobby completely undressed. We had another lady show up to the lobby in her undies. Her boyfriend had choked her out and stolen her wallet with the room keys. I worked at a hotel in a resort town in Europe. One of the maids called me to a room for help because it was in the location of an extremely messy bout of group whoopee from the touring ice show. The room was covered in bodily secretions and excreta. There were used rubbers thrown everywhere and half the furniture was busted. The poor maid was in tears, thinking she'd have to clean it. The hotel management called in a professional cleaning company who wore disposable suits, respirators, and eye protection. They got rid of most of the stuff in the room and charged a fortune to the ice show. Had a teen girl exposed from the waist down, speed-walking around the hotel and casino looking for her mum. She was absolutely hammered and in a full blackout. Me and another supervisor caught up to her just as she was getting into an elevator full of drunk dudes telling her they'd help her find her mum. Her mum was not at the casino and we never determined where she actually came from. She just appeared there, moving like a speedwalker, undressed except for a tank top. I work front desk at a luxury hotel. One night, the elevator door opened and a completely undressed woman stumbled out, covered in blood. It turned out she was epileptic and had had a seizure in the shower. She had fallen, grazed herself, exited her room and locked herself out. It was a truly terrifying 25 minutes of trying to piece together what had happened. As someone with seizures, this is my worst fear, man. Although I don't want to minimize the fact that people with any level of epilepsy have it way harder than me, I'd just like to posit that I feel like I'm capable of having this level of accident without seizures and just by dint of being clumsy. Thank you for your time. I was a night auditor at Home 2 Suites several years back. Our usual extended stay clientele were traveling nurses, government contractors, or out-of-town veterans getting something done at the VA hospital. But we had one guy and girl on the first floor for a few weeks that were odd. It took us a while to realize that it was a working girl and her pimp. Some John would come to see her, and the guy who rented the room would come and hang out in the lobby or go smoke at our fire pit. Our manager was a bit clueless and took longer to figure it out, but once she did, she went and knocked on the door to ask them to leave. The guy only cracked the door so she couldn't see inside the room. He had declined housekeeping for 2 weeks straight, but she managed to see an office chair behind him that had 2 firearms and a huge Rambo knife on it. So she called the cops. I came up later that day to pick up my check to find cops surrounding the building. Turns out he'd barricaded himself in the room and held the girl hostage, so SWAT had to come tear gas him through the window and use a battering ram to get inside. The owners fired our manager for that, for letting it go on so long, and for the optics of cops swarming our hotel. I was night shift security for a motel right next to the biggest casino in my state. It was common for substance addicts to hang out around the property. One time, this guy staying in a room did a little too much crystal and had a freak out. He was running around the walkways undressed. I had to ward him away from people's rooms so they wouldn't be disturbed. He ended up jumping off the second-story balcony and splatting on the pavement. He scampered up and raced across the street into a car dealership. Not my problem anymore. Many years ago, I worked at a very nice casino resort as a valet. A regular pulled up in his nice BMW and I went to help him. I wrote up his ticket, got his keys, and offered to help load up his luggage on a bell cart while we waited for a bellman. Opened the truck and went to lift the suitcase and I just about threw my back out. I was not prepared for it to be so heavy. I gave it another go and heaved it onto the bell cart, and I heard a sound. "Mr. Smith, did your suitcase just make an oof sound?" Long story short, a working girl who was banned from the property was stowed away in there to get back up to his room. The crazy crap that people pull on the regular to get blacklisted buddies, or blacklisted working girls, into their rooms, and that was just working in my hometown motel? Jesus! It was like some sort of video game nightmare of Spot the Impersonator. I had to know just who everyone was and all their potential relations too. Who was friends that week, and who was on the outs with each other. Who was dating who in the townie circle that week. 2 cousins parking their vehicles weirdly close to each other? Nope. Looks like one's back to dating the crazy pyro girl who lives under the interstate. She's definitely sneaking into the first floor room at that moment. The whole swapped ID with a similar looking person and a hoodie trick. Looking at the floor and waiting till a new hire was on duty to walk in. I've seen a legit full-on wig once. When an acquaintance of a blacklist checked in, next thing you know there's a blurred streak making mad dashes from a car to a room. That was always peak trouble, that signal. I'm working night shift as a receptionist and I had my fair share of questionable encounters. One night a guy comes from outside and asked if he could use our restroom. It's located 1 floor down. Every time we let someone in at night, we kind of scan the person before letting them in, and I didn't get any crazy vibes from that dude. After about 20 to 25 minutes, I got the feeling maybe everything wasn't okay and I went downstairs. When approaching the bathrooms, I could hear him inside the handicap toilets, and the door was open a bit. He was on his knees with his pants down, cranking and choking on the door handle while watching smut on his phone. I yelled at him and asked what the heck he was doing, but didn't want to lay hands on him, so I grabbed a towel and threw it over his face to break line of sight. I told him to leave immediately or I'd call the cops. I went upstairs and after a few minutes, he left the building. That one sticks out for me. Not witnessed, but I saw a portion on camera. A guest was walking the halls with a machete. He proceeded to go into his room. A few minutes later, the guest next door can be seen pounding on his door. The previous night, that guy had attacked the woman he was staying there with. I'm assuming they thought he was attacking her again. The neighbors started to head back to their room when the guest throws the woman out of the room, with her arm barely attached, spraying blood all over the walls and floor. He doesn't notice the door shut behind him and he takes off running. He was caught very quickly in a parking lot next door. That room was something I'll never forget. Blood and flesh on the bed and floor. The boss said to tell housekeeping to clean it up. I quit a few days later. Worked at AITA in Toronto. Management sent me up to a room that they knew for a fact contained a pimp. Big fur coat, grills, giant chains, and of course, his employees. They didn't warn me of this beforehand. If they did, I wouldn't have gone alone. The guy's employees were both undressed from the waist up and apparently celebrating a birthday, and tried very hard to get me to join in. I just needed them to not get another noise complaint because I did not want to have to evict them. Night auditor here, I've seen a lot. Multiple times I've had guests come to my desk completely undressed because somehow they locked themselves out. Again, undressed. This one always confuses me. And probably the most not safe for work one was a guest who'd gotten violently ill. We're talking projectile throw up on every surface of the room, blood all over, poop, pee, everything was just destroyed. Obvious call to paramedics, but I can never unsee that. I did security for a hotel for a number of years. I've seen au naturel guests locked out of their rooms, wedding parties break into the pool area and jump in fully clothed, and had a drunk woman climb out of her third-floor window and chill on the roof just below. The worst was when someone drowned in the lake beside the hotel and they hadn't found the body yet. Doing night rounds sucked because I was afraid I'd find the body. I think this story fits the bill for what you're asking. I was a pizza delivery boy. There was a Fleabag motel in our town and we get a call for pizza delivery. I get the order, I drive it over and knock on the room door. Guy answers the door wearing only a towel and I glance right past him and there's a beautiful, even more undressed woman laying on the bed on full display. She notices me looking, I'm sure, and just says, "How you doing, baby?" Not baby in like the way you'd call a lover, or like she was flirting, but more in a motherly way. I looked up at the dude after that and he just gave me a look like, "That's right, I just got done hitting that." Man, feels like he set this whole thing up as much for the little self-esteem boost of someone else just seeing him like this, as much as for the actual sensations of hiring her or for the taste of pizza. Just get normal hobbies, my dude. This one time staying at a hotel, and just outside my room, like 2 doors, someone passed out drunk and crapped himself. The liquid kind, in a huge pool, at least 2 meters in diameter. The hotel changed everyone on the floor to other rooms in other floors. When I was young and worked at a hotel, I was delivering a room service meal, and when I got there, the door was closed, but had just been left shy of being latched. I knocked and the guest yelled, "Come in!" I pushed it open with the cart, walked in, and he was standing there with a big grin on his face, watching my reaction as I wheeled in the cart. He was undressed, as was a woman who was on her knees in front of him, vigorously working. She never stopped or even did a sideways glance in my direction. He smiled and reached out and handed me a 20 he had in his hand and said to just leave it there and close the door on my way out. I guess part of the whole deal was to show off and see my reaction. I was shocked but never said anything to anyone at work. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work at the front desk of a large convention hotel, one of the big brands. The lobby bar was right across the lobby from the front desk. One night as I was working the desk, checking someone into their room, these 2 drunk guys in the bar got into a fight. They were really going at it, beating the crap out of each other, and they spilled out into the lobby. One guy picks up a bar stool and just like in the movies, he crashed it down on the other guy's head. But unlike in the movies, the bar stool didn't splinter into pieces. It was solid wood and he bashed the other guy hard. Other guy went down like a sack of potatoes, out cold and bleeding all over the place from a large head wound. I got to sit and watch as the cops and paramedics came, arrested them both and patched up the one guy's busted head. Meanwhile, I still had guests checking in, wondering what kind of hotel they had booked. I saw someone mop without putting out the sign. Definitely not safe for work. Well, let's see. One time, this guy left his recently used male adult toy in the room he was in. Hint, it's 1 letter away from flashlight. Never heard from him again. This other time, someone left a hardcore cartoon tentacle magazine in the room hidden under a cabinet. Then there was this other time a guy was smoking green herb in his room, and when I knocked on his door due to a complaint, the guy offered me a doobie. And yes, I took it. Got to deal with the crap I saw there somehow. I work in the back of the house at a major Las Vegas resort. When we first opened, management made every effort to conceal anything negative that might have occurred from the guests staying at the resort. One day on the receiving dock, an ambulance crew comes through pushing an empty gurney. About 30 minutes later, they came back with a body completely under the sheet. someone had clearly passed away. The not-so-safe-for-work moment came when we realized that this obvious man's corpse had a protruding appendage coming from his groin, tenting the sheet. It was rumored that what had done him in was taking too much white snow and performance-enhancing bedroom meds, and he had died in the act. I used to work third shift at a hotel while going to university. One weekend every summer, our city hosted a tournament for the National Softball Association for the Deaf. One night I got multiple noise complaints and went upstairs. In one of the rooms, a man and a woman were having the loudest, most bestial whoopee you could possibly imagine. You could hear it from 30 meters down the hall. They weren't answering the phone and obviously couldn't hear me knocking. I used a master key to crack open the door, and there was even more amazement at the pure volume and completely atonal and unabashed moans, grunts, and yowls. Being careful not to stick my head in, I reached inside the room and flipped the lights on and off and then pretty much ran away. It's a shame people complained because I hated to interrupt what must have been a good time. The most not safe for work thing that I recall was the manager getting on a cleaning kick and accidentally mixing the wrong chemicals in the pool area. A toxic gas started to form and the whole hotel had to be evacuated at like 5 a.m. Eastern Idaho, night audit and front desk. During a state-high school wrestling tournament, I heard a commotion in the sauna around 2 a.m. Grabbed the night audit baseball bat and went to see what was going on. Found 20 to 30 teenage boys either completely undressed or in their wrestling outfits, camping out in a sauna with room for 6. They were obviously trying to sweat down to make weight. A couple of months later, I heard a guy yelling from the closed indoor pool at around 4 a.m. He'd stuck his Johnson in a drain hole at the side of the pool and it got stuck. I assessed he wasn't in immediate danger and called the fire department. He wasn't free when I left at 6. Oh, the wrestling tournament. At least in Iowa, it's the bane of all hospitality workers in the Des Moines area. Back in the 1980s, I worked with a woman who had previously worked at a Holiday Inn, and she told me about a young boy who had agreed to be stripped undressed, folded up into a rollaway, and his friends were going to roll it down the hall to the cheerleaders' rooms and sprawling the bed open there. At least, that's what they told him. They actually took it into a very crowded lobby, popped the bed open, and ran off. I'm guessing a few people got in trouble for doing that. I had a woman tell me she was only into white guys and it's too bad I'm not. I'm pretty dark-skinned Mexican, by the way. I didn't really acknowledge that she said that. Her husband said he needs to go talk to the front desk. 10 seconds later, she pulls up her dress and tells me to do her on the bar. She says it's a fantasy to get railed by a hotel or service worker. I ask her to please go away as 1, I'm not staff, I'm just sitting at the bar, and 2, my wife is next to me laughing at her airing her taco in the hotel bar. The bartender is mortified. The actual staff are apologizing. I ask for what because my wife is hysterically laughing and I'm not afraid of free-range women. Now my wife is dying laughing and we just showed up here for our honeymoon 30 minutes ago. Overall, good start to the week. I worked as a housekeeper in a hotel. I saw so many marital aids and butt toys just left in the room. I also had to clean off face and women's chest prints on the glass door to the balcony. Worked on a show at a Las Vegas casino. During the AVNs, the Adult Movie Awards show, a top actress came to our show with her boyfriend. The show was held up because she started lifting her shirt to show the audience her chest. Then she went south of the border on the boyfriend. As security finally arrived, they were full on doing the deed while sitting in the audience. He went to, quote, get drinks, ditching her. She bit a security guard in the arm so hard that she hit bone. Eventually, she was carried out and arrested. I'm sure the boyfriend was as well. Their awards show was the next day, but she missed it due to being in jail. This was a Cirque du Soleil show, definitely not the place for this behavior. Wow, you really made me go all out on censoring and selective word choice for that story. In my last comment, I mentioned I was a bit mystified by people really needing to display their reproductive activities. I did not think that the trend of that behavior would only grow from there. I used to work at a hotel. Thankfully, I never witnessed anything in person, but I was certainly privy to a lot more info than I ever cared to know. One day, a young man came in asking for a room. Sure, we have availability, and I went over rooms and pricing. He said, let me ask my chick. I didn't pay too much attention to his wording. A few minutes later, he came back and got registered in, and I thanked him and said I hoped him and his girlfriend had a nice stay, and let me know if there's anything else I can do for them. Nah man, she's not my girlfriend, he replied. I apologized again. I didn't pay too much attention to his wording earlier, so I simply said, sorry, I misunderstood. He replied, Just 'cause I nut her doesn't make her my girlfriend. But you know, I got to do something, right? I simply replied, "Sir, I hope you have a pleasant stay." I really didn't need to know all that, he certainly didn't need to tell me, I really didn't know how else to reply. But I'm probably safe in assuming that he and, well, it wasn't his girlfriend, but her, regardless of their relationship status, certainly did have a good night. Although again, I really didn't need to know that. Worked in a luxury hotel. Had a particular convention in town with guests who expected a lot of freebies because of who they were. Christian Men's Ministry Group. The leader was a smug jerk who convinced our room manager to give them the largest conference rooms for free so that their wives could spend the day doing Bible study. That afternoon, we had a father and his son tell us that they could hear a muffled scream coming from the room next to theirs, so he went up for a wellness check. Lo and behold, the religious ministries guy had called for a working girl who had bought her boyfriend. They tied him up in a sling hanging from the bathroom doorframe, gagged him, robbed him, and stuck a double-ended marital aid in his butt. So that's how we found him. It took multiple maintenance crews to be able to cut him down. He then tried to get us to comp more of their rooms because of our security failures, leading to his assault, battery, and robbery. One of our staff let slip to his wife, their bookkeeper, what actually happened, and his complaints magically went away. Best friend was the GM, I was the manager. He found over the years 4 firearms, 5 pounds of green herb at once, and 2 to 3 dead bodies. The amount of weapons is what surprises me. Only 1 out of the 4 guns found over the years was reported stolen. I worked housekeeping in a shady hotel in my local area. I say shady because it's a nicer hotel, but it's in a bad part of town and it attracts a lot of crazies. There was a man that used to tip the housekeepers in Mary J to clean his room. A large amount of green herb to the housekeepers in an illegal state and always wondered why. I finally got my turn to clean his room and I figured it out. There were adult toys everywhere. Everywhere. They were suction cupped to the headboards, shower, and toilet seat. There was loose glitter all over every inch of the room, as well as the balcony and fireplace. Used rubbers lined up like they were being counted before being thrown out on the table, and a seat at the end of the bed. He was always in the room while you cleaned, profusely apologized, and asked you not to say anything, and would just hand you an ounce just to throw out the trash, vacuum, and replace the towels and sheets. It was good stuff, so I understood why the other housekeepers never ratted him out. One night while I was working audit, I had some guests ask if there was any way to use the pool after hours. As our pool closed at 11 and they were checking in fairly close to midnight, I begrudgingly agreed as I had homework to do and I thought I'd be nice. So I agreed and let them in. My mistake was not turning on the lights, which I left off to not make other guests who might happen upon it think that it was open. So I let them in and proceeded to do my homework and ignored them. After a while, I decided to check the cameras to see if they were still in there or if they'd returned to their room. Upon looking at the cameras, I see them just going at it. At first, I didn't believe what I saw, but they were going to Pound Town. I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to be that guy to ruin their good times, but I still had my job to worry about. Since the lights were off and it was just late, I let things finish off. I did get a nice tip from them as thanks for letting them, quote, use the pool after hours. That was the first and last time I let people in the pool area after hours. It was an interesting night for sure. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.